Today on Doomed! The coronavirus. My God. It is changing how we live. I mean, no matter who you are. Hell, even Donald Trump today seems like he's getting a little bit fed up with it, saying that maybe it's just time for some people to die, basically, so we can get the economy back up and running. That guy, man, that guy. Anyway, today on Doomed, I have a very special guest who will be walking us through how one specific industry is basically being decimated by the coronavirus. And that is a industry very near and dear to me because I've been a lifelong fan, pro wrestling. I should note, actually, that this is the 100th episode of Doomed. I'm very happy to be talking about pro wrestling on this episode. I would have hoped that this episode, the 100th episode, would have been a celebratory episode, but I think we'll put the celebrations on hold till we're done with the coronavirus pandemic, which could be a couple of months at the very least. But anyway, without any further ado, and let me get one plug in really quick, patreon.com/MattBinder, youtube.com/MattBinder. Super chats are open if you'd like to ask any questions. I'll take super chats on the front end for sure. And without any further ado now, for real, my guest today is David Starr. He is a pro wrestler and co-founder, I should say, of We the Indie. He's up on screen now. David, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Matt. I really appreciate you giving me the chance to highlight a lot of people that have been affected by this virus. No one talks about, which, I mean, I guess it makes sense. Pro wrestling's not normally at the forefront of everybody's mind.
I mean, but, pro wrestling to me has been probably and people who listen to this show know I've done numerous pro wrestling centric episodes on this show. This is a show that's primarily a politics podcast, yet I always fit in a pro wrestling episode. Pro wrestling has been a constant in my life, probably like no other than obviously, like family, friends, but pro wrestling is like the one thing that has always been there. I've been watching pro wrestling since my dad put it on TV when I was 3 years old. There's been ebbs and flows for me personally in terms of, me sort of falling out of it a little bit because maybe it wasn't so good at the time. Example, the mid-90s WWE. But other than that, I've been... And also, I should say, after WWE bought WCW and completely botched the invasion angle, that really pissed me off. So I took a break from wrestling for a little bit after that. But it has been a constant for me, and it is something to me. And I've said before that, in many ways, what you see in politics now more than ever actually really it's like a mirror image of pro wrestling. Pro wrestling is such a perfect, basically like a showcase of what the culture and our political reality now is. I mean, we literally have a WWE Hall of Famer as the president of the United States dealing with all this.
Yeah.
So, David, tell me, as an indie wrestler, what are you doing right now with the coronavirus basically shutting every live event down?
I mean, I had a few days of panic, to be perfectly honest. Like, me personally, I had a few days of panic because, especially during this time, from like March till June, is actually probably the most lucrative time to be a pro wrestler, especially an independent pro wrestler. There's a lot of big time events that seem to be scheduled during the beginning of spring, early, like right before summer comes out. So a lot of events that have like a huge amount of people are coming. I was just supposed to wrestle John Moxley for OTT, which is the best independent wrestling company in the world in Ireland, based in Ireland. We were supposed to wrestle there, and that was a stadium show with 2,200 people. Tickets were sold out. Had a bunch of hype videos. It was great. A lot of energy and everything put into it. There's also a bunch of other huge stars on the show like Pac and Mustache Mountain was supposed to be on the show and everything. Had to cancel because the government shut it down. OTT is out of a lot of money because a lot of they paid for travel and hotels, and a lot of people had asked for wages ahead of time as well. Someone ended up putting up a GoFundMe up for OTT themselves. I forget the link, which is terrible. But if you just look up Over the Top Wrestling in Ireland, you look up their GoFundMe page. John Moxley actually ended up donating $1,000 to it after, which is pretty cool of him. But I mean, for us, like that's one of my that's like a big payday just on the wage for the match, and then on top of that, with that many fans there, had like a special shirt that's going to come out. I was expecting to sell possibly like 75 to 100 shirts that day, so I'd be looking at like a couple thousand bucks. Which would have really helped. And then obviously with WrestleMania and everything being canceled in a way, I mean it's going to be in an empty arena now, which is so strange. But with that being canceled, a lot of guys are missing out on multiple shows because usually wherever WrestleMania is, it's like a huge celebration of wrestling that whole weekend. It's pretty awesome. You see wrestling fans from all over the world come in, and independent promotions local to where WrestleMania is running, they run shows, and all these other big time indie promotions that not necessarily are from the area, they come into the area so fans can come and see them live for the first time. It's like a huge thing. A lot of big matches are featured there all the time. That's a lot of money out of a lot of people's pockets, a lot of merch gone. And then moving forward, we don't know what's up. Like all of my shows until May have been canceled. So I literally have zero income because I'm a self-employed person, and self-employed people don't get unemployment benefits. Pretty much seems like anywhere, except some countries have done the right thing so far.
You're based in the
But
UK, right? I just want everyone to
yeah,
know where
now
you're. Yeah.
so I'm originally from Philadelphia, but I moved to the UK in September of 2018. It's great over here. I mean, it is. Tonight, Boris Johnson just basically announced a lockdown for 3 weeks. So, but I had nothing to do anyway. I'm basically just all I've been doing. I've been kind of like getting together like old gear that I have and kind of leftover pieces of merchandise that I have, and I'm putting stuff up on my website to try and make money. I've been also running my podcast and the company we started, myself and James Musselwhite, We the Independent. We have our podcast that we do as well. So that's a completely free podcast, but we're pushing the merchandise we're selling on our stores. All things to try and create content just to keep themselves relevant and keep themselves going, because that's a huge part of just selling yourself, is just being good at social media and making sure that you maintain a certain level of buzz. You have to do something. You have to create content. You have to do. It's tough right now, and a lot of us are, whether you're a wrestler or not, a lot of us we're out of money, man, and we don't really have much recourse.
Right. And like I'm sure it's hard for a lot of artists out there, but I think the difference is with a musician or an actor or a comedian, they could continue to perform their craft on on a live stream or on video and disperse it. They could still put out new music and get paid for that. They could put out if they're a comedian, they could record a stand-up special in their own living room or whatever. But I think with a professional wrestler, and I'm sure you could correct me if I'm wrong, unless you're living with another professional wrestler who is quarantined and safe, and are going to put on a match in your living room or backyard if you have one, there's not much you guys could do other than, I guess, constantly upload promo videos. But I don't know if anyone's going to really pay for a promo video event. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's you're right. You're right. I mean, just recently, last week, before because every single day more and more restrictions are coming out. Because like today, the announcement was that no more public gatherings more than 2 people. That's what they said. Was today. Well, earlier this week that wasn't the case. I think it was up to like 50 people or something like that. So we had a no fans arena show that was streamed on Wrestle Talk. Will Ospreay actually put it together, and he asked a bunch of guys to come down for these matches, and all the money that was raised on Super Chat was all donated to the wrestlers, and they had a T-shirt put out, and all the proceeds was donated to the wrestlers. So that's probably the last form of income from actually wrestling that we're gonna get to have for minimum of till May at least, and then who knows after that. So yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's hard because, like you said, we can't just stream ourselves playing music or whatever and just doing promos. There's some people that have like there's guys like RJ City, and there's guys like Effie who are two like well-known indie wrestlers, and they're great at social media and they're great at creating content. Ethan Page is another one. You might have seen him on Impact. He's great at creating content and keeping his fans entertained and making videos and stuff that are. But the production value is something that, I mean, maybe anybody can do it. I don't know, but they seem to have a special talent for it to make it interesting. So people would like pay for their own Patreon page or whatever they have. They're just doing things for everybody. There's a UK wrestler named Gene Money who's also like that. It's extremely entertaining, and he puts out videos, and it's awesome. But most of us, like most thing I do, I just go nuts. I constantly think about like the news and politics, and I'm trying to think about the ways that it's ways we can help wrestlers and wrestling promotions. So it's just hard, man.
Right.
I don't know how to say it. It's real rough thinking about not making money for 3 months possibly.
Right. For people who don't know, I just want everyone to really get to know who David Starr, the pro wrestler, is. The person, too, because it seems like you're one of those individuals who's one and the same in the ring. You
Yeah.
are basically a leftist professional wrestler because you are actually a leftist.
Yeah, yeah. It's just kind of been something that has gone more in. Yeah, I just always. Yeah, I guess they always say the best characters are like yourself turned up with the volume turned up a little bit, and I've just kind of dug more into that. I've always thought like pro wrestling. We're always told that it's supposed to be, it's the portrayal of sport. That's what pro wrestling is. It's, just to let the audience in on a little secret, the outcomes are predetermined.
Ooh.
I know, I'm sorry to tell you, like a lot of the action, like the physicality of it is very real. I feel it every morning when I wake up, and my body is probably going to love this time off.
Jim
But
Cornette, if he listens to this show, he's gonna send me an angry email saying you just ruined it.
oh,
You just
Jim
ruined
Cornette
the.
hates me. Um,
You just
well,
ruined.
he hates me. We've had Jim Cornette and I have had a few spats out there, but so
my favorite, probably my favorite Vince McMahon clip of all time, my favorite Vince McMahon moment, I should say, of all time. You ruined it. You ruined it.
the outcomes are predetermined, but like the idea that we've always told was that it's supposed to portray a sporting contest. We're the story we're supposed to tell ultimately is trying to win and trying not to lose. So I always thought that I felt that I was a pretty entertaining wrestler when I wrestled in college and stuff like that in high school and when I was little. I was always told that I was kind of entertaining for whatever reason. So I just kind of thought about just being an athlete, just being a pro wrestler is just being a pro athlete. And you see all these different pro athletes out there that have these crazy electric personalities, and they're just themselves, and they develop buzz by being themselves, and they just got to do it. So I just figured that that's just what I leaned into, and as time has gone on, I've become more and more radical in my politics. Since 2016, Bernie radicalized me to start, and then I've just been going down this rabbit hole.
No, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Sorry. I just want to say you brought it up, and I don't want to forget. It's amazing just how much has changed in such a little amount of time, because it literally has been just like at the beginning of the year, I was like, oh, I'm gonna have David on because I know he's a Bernie supporter, and I saw a video of you actually when you were in the States, you were canvassing for Bernie, and I was like, oh, that's perfect. I could do an episode about leftists and pro wrestling and how more pro wrestlers seem to be getting progressive in an industry that a lot of conservatives pretty much make up the pro wrestling industry, even though the audience is completely the other side of the.
It's weird. It's weird because it seems like indie wrestling. It seems like fans seem to be more progressive, and then when it comes to like the corporate wrestling side, you get more fans that aren't as such. WWE's audience is mostly conservative. But I just had Tim Fost on our show yesterday, the single payer healthcare expert, and the author. He came on our show, and I asked him about that, and he his thought process was that indie wrestling fans tend. He didn't go as far as calling them progressive, but he said they're more empathetic or sympathetic to wrestlers' issues, such as the lack of unions and the fact that we're not getting paid that much and all that stuff, because they connect with you on a personal level. On an indie wrestling show, you can go, like usually us, we're all after, like at intermission, after the show, before the show, we're standing behind our merchandise table, and you interact with us. Like fans come up, shake your hand, you say hi, you have conversations, you develop little relationships with fans that you see all the time or whatever. It's just a way. It's a good way to connect with the fan base, and it's just much more intimate. So I think that wrestling fans tend to be more indie wrestling fans tend to be more connected with the wrestlers than you would see the people on TV, where who the hell's met John Cena without paying $50 for it, or at least, I mean, he might be $100 now, which, good for John Cena. I hope he gets all that money. But like, it's just a different relationship.
Right. I always look at it, and I think that's a great point. I always look at it because I came up from the punk scene when I was, very young. I got into punk rock, and basically have been into it my whole life since getting into it sort of like pro wrestling. And there's real, I think, like comparisons could be made between punk rock and indie wrestling, and then like mainstream music and WWE. Like, as a kid, teenager, it's harder now with kids, but when from junior high to my mid-20s, I was going to punk shows all the time because it's just something that you did. Whereas, if you're not into that scene, going to a concert once or twice a year seems like a big deal. And I feel like that's sort of like the thing. Like, you would see these punk bands come in, what they would do for little to no money. You would get a feel for that, and you could meet them, talk to them after the show, say great set. They're often at the merch table when you buy their shirt, just like indie wrestlers. It's completely different. Like, you're not going to see, you go see Rolling Stones. Mick Jagger's not selling you the Rolling Stone t-shirt.
No.
I guess the equivalent could be with go to WWE. You're not buying a Hulk Hogan t-shirt directly from the man himself at the merch table. So, so yeah, it's
no, yeah, that's the thing. You develop a relationship with guys. You develop a relationship with your fan base more. That's really it. Yeah, like and it's very analogous to like punk rock scene. In fact, I mean, especially over here in the UK, it seems that the indie wrestling fan base, even more especially down. Actually, no, it's pretty much throughout the country. There is a connection with punk rock and pro wrestling. I mean, Progress Wrestling was, when it was completely independent, was the hottest UK indie, the Brit Rest indie that there was, and they attached themselves directly to the branding of punk rock pro wrestling, and it had this. There's this cool vibe there, you know what I mean? Like, where the fans, it just feels like very anti. It just feels like a big fu. That's pretty much it, and it's good because it's so different. It's so counterculture. Unfortunately, that feeling was slightly lost in Progress because they ended up affiliating with WWE, and I think people kind of understand that. Still great shows. They still have great talent on there. Obviously, it's still everything's closed now, but when it was and everything was normal, it was still awesome. But there's definitely lost a little bit of luster. You can't really call yourself punk rock and also work for WWE, but is what it is.
Right. Well, there are some punk bands that signed to major labels and did sort of keep their punk rock cred. There are a few.
I think there's a bit of a difference when it's literally a monopoly of a company.
That's true.
It's slightly there, and on top of that, when that same company has a history of shutting down local, like small-time regional promotions, they have a history of acting that way. It is what it is. There's plenty of things you can look at within the way WWE treats its workers and all of that. That's so not punk rock that it'll make it doesn't even make sense. But I'll just do it. It's so not punk. It'll make your head spin.
That was a good impression. That was very good.
I'm working on a lot of impressions.
It's a lot of time to do it. But I want to really drive home, because for people who aren't pro wrestling fans who listen to this show, I want to drive home what an indie wrestling promotion is, because maybe they're thinking of, oh, it's like the minor leagues. They have some sort of backing or deal with like WWE, and they all work with WWE or something. Now that they've just heard you say there's a few that do that, maybe they're confused. Indie wrestling promotions, I guess, if we're going to keep the punk rock analogy going, it's literally, each promotion is literally like, I guess, a DIY venue in which if they're not running shows, they will go out of business, because they literally probably, for the most part, I would say the large majority of both DIY venues and indie wrestling promotions are probably affording to do so show by show. And also, I'm going to assume that for most of both DIY venue and indie wrestling promotion, that's not the owner of either's full-time job.
I mean, there's some that are fortunate enough to do that, but most of them no. I mean, the reality is, I've been very fortunate enough, especially over the past couple of years, to wrestle for like the top indie wrestling promotions in the world. I've done a few things on like some of the corporate wrestling things. Like I've been on TNA before. I've done Ring of Honor. I've done that stuff before. But like I've been fortunate enough to work for all these top promotions, and a lot of the indies. There are the top guys, the top promoters.
Hold on, we just lost your sound.
Okay.
Your audio just went, but you're still on the air. Did something happen on your end over there?
I don't know. Nothing seemed to happen. Can you hear me now?
Why don't I call you right back and we'll reset it?
Yeah, sure.
Oh wait, you just came back. Hold on, your audio just came back. Cool. I have no idea what happened, but okay. Continue from where you left off. I could easily edit that out of the podcast. No problem.
Okay, cool, man. So basically, some of the top indie wrestling promoters are living on promoting indie wrestling, but most of them are not. Yeah, it's definitely not their full-time jobs, or they have like a wrestling school attached to the company. So then you'll have mat fees that are coming in weekly, but then you also pay. Usually, it requires having an office, so you're also paying rent on that. There's different ways that indie wrestling promotions kind of stay alive, other than just ticket sales. Obviously, merchandise, which includes streaming services online and everything like that. But you're right when you say most indie wrestling promoters are not just indie wrestling promoters, and most indie wrestlers are not just indie wrestlers. Although the thing that's been great is there's almost been like this pro wrestling middle class that's been created over the past couple of years, because we went through a bit of a boom. So the indie wrestling kind of really blew up, especially in Europe. And I just so happened to be fortunate enough to catch to start coming to Europe 2016, which is when European indie wrestling really kicked off, and UK wrestling was huge, and WXW in Germany was huge, that's a company that I work for all the time. I don't work there any longer, because the way I put it, freedom of speech does not mean freedom from consequence. That's pretty much, we can leave it there. And WXW is an affiliate of WWE. Same with Progress. And again, we can say freedom of speech does not mean freedom of consequence. We can say it that way. But a lot of guys had just started to put their real jobs and become full-time indie wrestlers, and it's been great watching so many people be so successful. Now everything else just had the rug just got swept from underneath us. Our fan base is losing a bunch of money, obviously, because people are losing a lot of money on this. Like the wrestlers are losing money, the promoters are losing money, the fans aren't going to have the money to be able to keep. It's a real disaster right now, but it's definitely not something that we can build savings on. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Most people, it's really difficult to save money if you're living a proper human life.
Right. So, if you don't mind, let's talk about that promotion we keep mentioning that seems to have an omnipresent, just omnipresent over the pro wrestling industry altogether, the WWE. Yep. And their decision to be, it seems like, the one wrestling promotion, again, to put them in the same category as any other indie is just, that's not what I'm doing. They are a monopoly, billion-dollar industry, and they are the one promotion who's keeping going during the coronavirus pandemic. They are doing things out of their their performance center, which is basically like a special gym just for their enhancement talent. And it's in Florida, and they have a small like arena set up in there that they've been doing events in since this all happened. Where basically no audience, and they're choosing to continue with their biggest event of the year, WrestleMania. Now, at first they were going to try to continue doing it in the huge football stadium that fits 70,000 people, even though the government's every state government was basically saying no more than 10 people together in a room at the very least. So when they moved from that, they decided to do this huge event at the Performance Center in front of nobody. I don't
Yeah.
know what the take is there. I know Vince McMahon loves to keep things going. The show must go on, according to him. That's his deal. He apparently doesn't believe in the concept of people getting sick either. I've seen. I do see a play. I don't think it's legitimate in terms of people's health, but from his business-minded only perspective, that to be the one live event, doing live events during this time period, I'm sure he's licking his lips and got a big smirk on his face about that. But what is your take on WrestleMania continuing as just a performer, as a fan? What is your feeling on that?
Well, first and foremost, I have to think of it as like a person and just say how insanely irresponsible it is. And that's it. And I mean, it does. Every person that works for Vince McMahon, especially the wrestlers, are just spokes on a wheel. He doesn't really care. Obviously, he cares about his bottom line first and foremost. He wants to make as much money as possible first and foremost. And I don't think that he could be any other way. If you to be him, to be worth $3 billion, you have to have that mindset. So it's irresponsible. It's ridiculous when these people are traveling. It's not like they don't live in Florida, because the performance centers for the NXT talent, the developmental talent. Well, it's not really developmental anymore.
Right.
It's like their third brand. And they have
It's
some
like
of the best wrestlers in the world there. It's actually from a objectively, as just a wrestling product itself, NXT is a great wrestling product.
right. No, it is. It is. The talent is great too. And if
Yeah.
we're gonna keep with the punk, the punk analogy, NXT, I guess, is the Sex Pistols of the industry in terms of like. Yeah, they're a small promotion, just like Sex Pistols were an organic punk rock band, and not put together by a label. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, WWE in a weird way. They were geniuses because they saw this thing that was getting so much attention. Indie wrestling was growing and growing and growing, and people were becoming more unhappy with the WWE product, that they decided to create their own alternative brand within itself. It's really smart. You can't argue the idea. They had the money to buy the talent to kind of hurt indie wrestling and build up their own thing and people say, oh, I like NXT, but I don't like WWE. It's like, dude, but whatever. Not the point.
Right.
But it's irresponsible to have any events. These people are traveling all over the country to get down to Florida for this as well. It's not like they're staying there and then coming back and forth. No, obviously wrestling isn't something that you can do without physically touching each other.
Right.
It's happening all the time. They have announcers right next to each other. They have people being brought in for these TV tapings that they're not essential. It's just not, you know what I mean? Like, they're not even wrestling matches. Some of them are just just flying in to do this like announcer spot where they're sitting next to a commentator and like touching and doing something like that. And it's like, what are we doing here? What's the point? WWE still has that time slot. They have, how much footage do they own?
Right.
They could put anything in that time slot. They would still be getting the money. Maybe their advertising dollars should go down. I don't know. But like, it's not really our problem.
Right.
You're subjecting your guys to getting sick. Like, I don't know what agents and producers and stuff are going there. A lot of people are old. A lot of wrestlers are also really worn down. They're taking medications, and they're like, especially the old ones, they're all messed up. And you're going to have them go there and be subjected to possibly getting sick? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. And on top of that, if you want to add in just like little moments you want to have, there's Drew McIntyre was scheduled to be in the main event with Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. Possibly going to be the time when somebody really cleanly beats Brock Lesnar, like a whole thing. It's being built up. It's always a big deal when Brock Lesnar's wrestling and Brock Lesnar's a champion, of course. And Drew McIntyre, who's had this crazy career, which he was like put on a pedestal, he was shot up to the moon at first, then all of a sudden he became like
A joke.
for whatever reason he started getting buried. He's like a job guy,
Yeah.
yeah. Then he went on the Indies and he was like the coolest dude ever. Like everyone loved hanging out with him, and he was killing it in the ring. He had great matches. Then he gets re-signed, and then he has this great run in NXT. Gets called up to the main roster again. Gets himself finally back, and he's in the ultimate spot, main event of WrestleMania, and it's going to be in front of no one. Like that whole, so many people's first WrestleMania moments are going to happen in the Performance Center, and you're like, oh, it'll be so memorable. Yeah, is that what we really want to do?
Right.
Like, just postpone it, because you can afford to postpone it. Vince was waiting. One of the reasons the stories that were coming out, Vince was waiting for the government to come out and say to cancel it, so he would get the event insurance. Otherwise, he wouldn't be reimbursed or whatever. Which, I mean, dude, like when he can take the hit, and it is just. It annoys me. It annoys me when these people who are making these like financial moves, like risking their own workers' safety, so they don't lose, I don't know, a couple $1 million. But that's pocket change to Vince McMahon. Like your workers safety should be first and foremost. But that's proven that he doesn't care about that based on when he left them in Saudi Arabia without a plane to get out of Saudi Arabia at one point. It's clearly obvious they don't care about that by not giving them any benefits, such as they don't have maternity leave, they don't have sick pay, they don't have vacation days, they don't get royalties for the WWE network, they don't get royalties or for their likeness being used on their YouTube, which generates tens of millions of dollars, if not $100 million a year from their YouTube content. He doesn't give any of that, but he does give it to all of his production staff.
Right.
The production staff gets all those benefits that the wrestlers don't.
And I want to add one more thing, and I'm sure that you know this better than anyone, especially being that this is an athletic industry. Healthcare.
I know where this is going.
Healthcare.
Yeah, no health insurance. WWE always says that they'll pay for you if you get hurt or something like that. They'll pay your medical bills, but they don't give you health insurance. And what about your families as well? Because it's not ridiculous. If you work for a $3 billion company, if you have a job there, you would expect to get health insurance. I think any normal person would expect to get health insurance from a $3 billion company. So, and then your family would probably get covered with that as well. Nope, they don't do that at all. And again, it just shows, you can just see where they put their money and where they put their focus. For the longest time, NXT, when it got bumped up to TV on the USA Network, they promised guys a raise, because they were getting this huge boost in television revenue now by having a brand new show, and then they took that raise away, and then pressure came up and they had to give it back, and then they gave it to, at one point they only gave it to a few guys to keep, and then they were the ones who kind of went out and were like, hey, they gave us this raise, like, but they didn't give it to everybody. It's insane. They make their guys rent their own cars and pay for their own hotel and travel. And they say they list you as an independent contractor, so that they say, oh, you can just write it off when you're done. At the end of the year on your taxes, they have things called downside guarantees, where so if I'm a wrestler for WWE, and actually downside guarantees exist for a lot of different corporate wrestling companies, but WWE kind of made it famous or whatever. So if I'm a wrestler for WWE, I sign. Let's just say I sign for $250,000 a year. That's my downside guarantee. So I'm guaranteed to make $250,000 a year from WWE at minimum, whether that comes from salary or merchandise and stuff like that. So let's say I sign that in January, I wrestle for 5 months, and then all of a sudden I make my $250,000, whether both through salary and the merchandise, but I get hurt the next day. Well, for the remaining 7 months of the year, if WWE pulls my merchandise and I don't wrestle, they don't actually have to pay me anymore. It's a terrible. Their contracts are so unilateral. The company that we work with in the company that we started, We the Independent, works with Equity, which is an entertainment trade union in the UK, And what they told us is they took a look at some of these contracts that are being issued for WWE, and their contract experts said that the contracts are so unilateral that in a court of law, it could be argued that they're invalid. It's that bad.
Why is it that wrestling has gotten away with this though? I've seen so much about I mean you guys are athletes, and you guys are also entertainers. In
Yeah.
every other sport has a union, or their players have a union. In the film industry, in the TV industry, the entertainment industry, they even Broadway has a union. Um, I I know wrestling has tried to unionize wrestlers have tried to unionize in the past, and thanks to people like Hulk Hogan, that hasn't been very successful. That's another
Yep.
that could be a whole hour-long podcast on its own. But
Get the governor on.
right, 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 Jesse Ventura, right. But I always wondered this, like I get that how I get the problems with wrestlers forming their own union and the struggle there, and how whoever decided to start that would be screwed if they got outed like Jesse Ventura did. But why doesn't SAG or the equivalent in the is it what's the I don't know what the equivalent in the UK is, or if it is the same thing. Why don't they step in? Because I understand the sports unions; it's little bit different, and they're all unionized with their own thing. But SAG and a lot of wrestlers are actually not a lot, but there are a number of wrestlers who are unionized with SAG because they do film and TV show work. Why isn't SAG, and I don't know if you could answer this, but I know you do work in this area with We the Indies. Why hasn't SAG been able to step in and be like, you know what, this covers the wrestling you see on TV at the very least?
Well, I've talked to a number of trade unions in America about what they can do for freelance wrestlers. That's obviously where we have
Right.
our where we're focused on. We're focused on independent wrestlers, but when obviously I've also talked to a bunch of guys who currently work for corporate wrestling companies such as Ring of Honor, who's owned by Sinclair Broadcasting, which, as we all know, is Satan. And then you have WWE, and you have AEW and Impact. There's a lot of these companies that I have friends that work there. So I've talked to them a bunch because it interests me as far as how these things operate and how they work. And yeah, basically, they do enough. They give you enough, just enough so you won't complain. That's kind of like the way it is, and then they'll give you a little bit more, and they want to keep you happy, or they'll dangle carrots in front of you to make sure that you don't talk up. Or I mean, WWE's obviously got this whole business surrounded around squashing any sort of in the industry entirely. They've actually, I don't know if it's intentional, but now they have all these different rosters, and they have like Raw and SmackDown, NXT, and they separate all of these things. They all travel separately, so it's kind of again, might not have been intentional, but they've split up these locker rooms so that they can't really talk. They can't really have any sort of solidarity amongst each other. It's harder, at least, to gain that. They just showed during the Saudi Arabia crisis where the WWE wrestlers weren't able to leave because Vince McMahon and MBS got in a pissing contest. SmackDown just brought all of the NXT guys in to fill their spots. They were just like, oh, okay, these guys, and a lot of those guys that were stuck were complaining. And it just goes to show you that WWE basically gave a little test run. If you guys try to walk out, we'll just replace you. And unfortunately, you have guys that they're taking advantage of, guys who want to get called up, who want to be seen on TV, on Raw and SmackDown. And that's the dream, right? They put that in front of you this whole time. And on top of that, they have this other thing called Legends contracts, where basically if you're a good soldier and you don't say anything, you don't rock the boat, you don't do anything like that, they'll keep you on a contract after you're retired. It's almost like selective pension. It's basically what it is. And they have such power over you and such power over the industry. It hasn't happened in wrestling because it can be scary. I mean, again, like I've lost bookings because of this, because of talking about this stuff. I've gotten in. I've lost bookings because of it. There's also times where I've gained some notoriety for speaking up about this stuff because whatever. I just don't really. I guess to me, if speaking up like changes even some slight stuff incrementally, and the cost is just this like indie schmuck's career, then whatever, it doesn't matter. I will figure out something else to do, and I'm loud enough where I continue to get noticed. It seems so. But we just need people to kind of step up. That's really it, because we all talk about this privately, and we just have to kind of step up and stand together in a public way, which has been great for fans, because fans showing their support for us makes us unable to be blackballed.
Right. Right. It's, I always, and this, I guess, goes back to the Hulk Hogan thing, but all it would really take, honestly, is for someone of that stature to actually care about their buddies. Like, what's to stop John Cena from coming back from Fast and the Furious, filming Fast and the Furious, and going, you know what, guys? Let's do this. Like, who would punish John fucking Cena? Nobody would.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And I mean, I know another thing that they've done, because I just realized, like, basically, like, kind of dismissed your the SAG question. But these guys, like Jesse Ventura, the famous story was at WrestleMania 2. He spoke up and basically said, we let's do it, let's get together. We have the law on our side. Hogan ratted him out, and then Jesse Ventura basically stopped because he was threatened to get fired. But then when he went into the movies and he got his SAG card, he kind of didn't. Apparently, he was like, okay, well, I got my protection. And after that, and he didn't want to like mess around anymore. But Vince, obviously, because why wouldn't he, hates SAG, and he hates unions in general. He also has created WWE Productions, like the WWE Studios. It's the movie production thing, and it's obviously non-union work. And again, that's something they dangle that carrot in front of these guys, because if you're members of SAG, then you're not going to get those jobs. They don't want that. He doesn't want to have to pay union wages and stuff. It is obviously just a massive issue. It's something it's clearly needed. The terms that wrestlers work under, when you talk to anybody outside of the wrestling industry and they hear about how terrible it is, especially at the corporate wrestling level, they don't understand why we put up with it, because it's not normal.
Right.
It's just not normal. But I've done plenty of complaining and talking about how corporate wrestling sucks when it comes to taking care of workers. AEW has done pretty well. I mean, not far enough, not good enough, but they've done the best that anybody else has. Them and New Japan are the two so far worker-friendly corporations, which I understand that's a paradox.
But even they are not open to the. I remember Cody out there was. I don't know. Cody seems like a good guy. Seems like someone who's open for someone running a wrestling organization somewhat the second largest wrestling organization in the U.S. He seems to be fairly progressive, especially when compared to someone like Vince McMahon. But even he seemed like he was talking up big workers' rights, and at the very least, in unionization. And then all of a sudden, the things become a reality with AEW, and all that just sort of went straight out the window.
Well, I think something we have to kind of get out of our heads, which I think it's easy to fall into, because it's really nice when your boss wants you to unionize, but it's really not their choice. So it can't be one of these things. We can't wait for permission.
Right.
It's nice if they give it to you. It's nice if they're on board with the idea, but why would you expect them to be? We have to stop thinking like, oh, it would be great if AEW did that. We have to step up and do it, and everybody's really happy there right now. So obviously, there's not going to be much push for change. And I do as far as like an official union being announced, or recognition of a union being announced, which would be great. And but they are doing a lot. I mean, they're giving health insurance to a lot of the wrestlers, not all of them, but a lot of them, which is more than anybody else has done. And it's not good enough, but it still is so far the best example we have. But yeah, we have to stop waiting for permission for it. We have to understand that we have the power. It is this interesting. I mean, overall, I think people have to recognize this, that has this crisis proven it? Like this crisis has proven it more so that markets are run by labor, not by capital.
Right.
And we have that kind of power. If we don't work, you don't have business. Period. And that's ultimately our power to wield, and we can and should be using that. That's on a corporate level. On an independent wrestling level, I've plugged my company a bunch of different times already. We the Independent, and we're a merchandising company that uses portions of our proceeds to sponsor pro wrestlers into trade union membership with Equity. Equity is an entertainment trade union in the UK, and they cover like theater actors and like ballet dancers and the sword swallower, all that sort of stuff. They all like the theater performance stuff, and they allow freelance pro wrestlers into their union. So we sponsor wrestlers' memberships into the union, and the union benefits are like it's crazy. Our company with Equity, our campaign pushed Equity to have their insurers include wrestlers into their disability welfare insurance policy for the first time ever. So we were really happy. It was a huge thing right out of the gate that we were able to accomplish, where we got wrestlers' disability welfare insurance now, if you're a member of Equity, which is unreal. If you're going to get hurt for 2+ weeks, you can claim 150 pounds a week for up to a year, which is pretty awesome. And there's a bunch of other benefits that go with being a member of Equity. It doesn't cost that much. It's only like £10, 58 a month, which that's nothing. And you can make your insurance 24 hours, like if you're going to the gym and stuff like that, for like £5, 29 pence a year. And so we sponsor a bunch of people
So
into that.
is that
Yeah.
something that you do for wrestlers that come over there, or like are you guys not like I don't know if you are because you just moved there a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
but would wrestlers who were born and raised or citizens there are they covered by NHS, or how does that work?
If you have a UK address, then you're going to be covered by the NHS. Like I'm not a citizen. I don't have a residential visa. I'm here on a work permit, work visa. But I still have access to the NHS. I have an NHS number. So if you have a UK address, Equity cover your Equity benefits. If you UK address, sign up to Equity. Your Equity benefits cover you globally. But if you don't have a UK address, you can still sign up to Equity, but then the benefits only cover you if something happens within the UK. But on top of that, we are using our Equity connection in the UK to reach out to different branches of Equity in all these different countries around the world, and we're starting to develop relationships with them so that this could become even more of a global initiative. We've talked to multiple trade unions in the US already, a couple quite prominent ones. Our biggest thing is, especially in the U.S., is getting guys health care. That's obviously the number one thing. But it's just not feasible for independent promotions to pay for guys' health insurance. It's just not going to happen. So it's going to have to be through the union. So we did have one prominent trade union agree to allow freelance wrestlers in, as long as the agreement, this code of conduct agreement, that would be basically a CBA, was negotiated through their union, but that union didn't offer health care through their union. So it was that's really the number one thing that we're looking for, is to get independent wrestlers, independent contractors, independent artists. We're looking to get them health insurance. So we're really pushing away, but we've made real good progress over here. We just signed up our second promotion to adopt a code of conduct, essentially a CBA. It's the first step towards properly unionizing, and we have really big goals, and we're getting there step by step. But nobody's been this far so far. We've more than quadrupled the number of wrestlers who are members of Equity since we've started, and we've only been around since July of 2019. That's when we launched 4th of July, We the Independence Day. It was a cute little thing I thought of. So
I like it.
yeah, I thought it was our Independence Day. So we've quadrupled the number of wrestlers who are Equity members. We've gotten them disability welfare insurance. We personally sponsor 10 different wrestlers into it. We've held unionizing rallies. We've held worker rights rallies at WWE affiliated events. We've gotten a WWE affiliated independent company to start paying all of their workers, because they weren't. Evolve wasn't paying all of their wrestlers. They were getting away with free labor by saying they had WWE connections and things like that. Gabe Sapolsky is fairly typical at doing that, who currently works for NXT as a producer. and he takes advantage of his wrestlers by saying, "Hey, I have these connections. I can make this happen for you," and he lets them work for free.
You know,
And that's been,
I don't know if
yeah.
you wanted. I didn't bring it up because I had it on a list of things to bring up to you, but I wasn't sure if you wanted to talk about that. But being that you brought it up, I have to just mention like, how is these WWE deal? Do these WWE deals make any sense? Like you know, what benefit are they getting out of it so far?
Platform.
But they don't even get a platform really because they're not WWE isn't doing anything for them. Like just sending a random WWE guy there. I mean, maybe if it was a small local indie, but for an indie like Evolve, I mean, they have some talent. It's not like like
Oh, you're saying what does it benefit? What does it benefit WWE to bring a WWE guy to an Evolve show,
no,
like
no,
an
no, no,
Evolve
no.
show
I'm
or a
talking. No,
Carter
I
show?
mean you
Or,
had it right the first time. But what I'm saying is like they send over some guy. Like they're not sending over some huge star to Evolve. They're sending over some like mid card guy, and I think
well,
Evolve.
it's usually it seems that they've been getting like top guys from NXT and some mid card guys from NXT, but yeah,
But it seems like a promotion like Evolve, what would benefit them would be a money deal, which is bizarre that these don't seem to have any sort of exchange of monetary funds, and then or B, Evolve on WWE Network or something where more eyes are getting on Evolve. Because what it seems like to me is all Evolve is doing is saying to their regular audience that already knows all about Evolve, hey, look, we got a WWE guy. Like, how the hell is that benefiting them? Those people are going to the show either way. They're not getting a new audience from it. I mean, I'm not seeing Evolve being talked about more since this new deal. I'm not seeing any of these companies that have signed a deal with WWE all of a sudden blowing up or becoming big. I mean, the big companies are still WWE, AEW, New Japan, and Ring of Honor. I don't see any other companies really all of a sudden making it because of a deal with WWE. The whole purpose of a deal like this to me seems money or a new audience, and WWE seems to be providing neither.
well, sometimes you also have to understand there's people that want to work for WWE because they always want to work for WWE. That is just a thing that absolutely is the case. WWE takes advantage of that. There was a story. I mean, not just with their workers, with people outside of it. Obviously, with promoters. Some promotions that they're allowed to use WWE wrestlers. There are a couple that do get money from WWE. They get funding from them. There's a couple here and there. They're it's very selective who gets it, who doesn't. I also believe that they are pretty much backed up. So if they do hit a massive problem, they won't be able to do something. They'll be okay. They're also they've been featured on they have a lot of them have been, like Evolve has done a WWE Network show, and I do believe that the idea of putting like Progress, ICW in Scotland, WXW in Germany, Evolve, these companies that are affiliated with WWE, the idea that has been floated around a bunch has been to put them on the WWE Network, which brings into a whole another set of issues, which is if our likeness from an indie show gets used on a WWE Network streaming service, there's a lot more money involved there.
Right.
There's obviously money exchanging hands there. We want our money for our likeness being used because that's a third-party exchange. Whenever I agree to work an independent wrestling show, it's kind of indirectly stated when I ask for my wage for the day, for whatever my rate is. I ask for this. It's kind of assumed that they're going to be filming it, they're going to sell it on DVD, they're going to put it on their streaming service. So I'm selling my likeness for them to use for that show. Completely understandable. But if a third party comes in and buys that footage and there's a lot of money exchanged, and my likeness is being used for you to make that money, no. Give me some money.
Right.
If this is going to happen. So that is one of the things they are trying to say is a benefit. But from a fan's perspective, why would an Evolve fan want to necessarily see a WWE guy come in? I mean, that's another thing that they've got with this NXT brand. It makes them feel like it's just like the biggest indie company. NXT right now is kind of like what Ring of Honor was in the mid 2000s. Like Ring of Honor was that like super sick indie where you could see all the coolest matches. It was so like underground feel, but still big enough to make you not feel like a dork for liking it. It was just cool. It was hard hitting. It was awesome. And they are able to they do bring that feeling. Fans love the performance. Again, I can't argue with. I think across the board, I think professional wrestling is at its best at an in-ring from an in-ring
I
perspective that
agree.
it's ever been.
Yep.
That it's ever been. There hasn't
Storylines,
been the
no. In-ring competition,
sure,
yes.
100%. But it also goes to show you. I mean, the mindset of the wrestling fan. We storylines of. I mean, we've seen the same thing over and over again. My stepdad used to tell me about when he'd read wrestling magazines. He started to put things together as he got older that wrestling magazines would sell stories, like storylines. They would make them up themselves to sell a story, and they would kind of repeat them throughout the
Right.
years every once in a while. It was just the same thing over and over again. So you got to get creative. And what that means is trying to find a different kind of adjusting your model a little bit. Obviously, WWE saying we're making a ton of money, our model works just fine. But you want to be able to keep your fan base throughout. And you look at something like a place like All Japan at one point. I think it was like a period of 10 years where they had every single match had a clean finish. And that's crazy, the way to book that way, keep people strong. And that's something that WWE hasn't been able to do. They haven't been able to translate having pure in-ring wrestling stories across the board. They always have to have little drama here and there, and that's kind of the stuff that turns off the diehards.
Right.
But I mean, I can't really. They keep making more and more money, right? So they're going to think they're doing the right thing. Um, it's tough. It's tough to say what. It's tough to say because obviously these companies, these indie companies that are using WWE guys are. I guess they think they're getting some benefit, whether that's just them being able to say, "Oh, look at me, I work with WWE, aren't I cool?" And it's like validation.
Right.
It's a way of them being like, "Yeah, look what I do." Because if you don't work for WWE, then you don't work for anybody.
Right.
That's kind of this weird. I mean, trust me, I hear that all the time in my mentions. Like, who are you? Who the fuck are you? I'm like, well, man, you're the one commenting on my thing. Like, um, but
I do get that
yeah,
mindset though, because again, let's use the punk rock analogy. When I was playing in punk bands back in the day, a lot of times we didn't get paid. It wasn't, I was young at the time, so it wasn't my career. We were just doing it to get the experience, to make the connections, to do that type of thing. And a lot of punk bands don't end up making a career out of it. There are a lot that do, but there's also a lot more that don't. Sort of like indie wrestling. But
yeah,
so I do get that mindset of sort of like I want to perform for the WWE so I could get just have that experience. But there's a point where like you do it the first time and that's great. You got that experience. You could say you wrestled for WWE. But then if they want you back, then they should fucking pay you. I mean, it seems pretty simple. And there's people I'm sure who even disagree with working that first one for free. I even get that, and I probably, if I didn't have that punk rock background, I probably would get that mindset too. But punk rock has ruined my mind in terms of this stuff. But then even so though, like we're dealing with a multi-billion-dollar corporation. You shouldn't be working for them for free. Yet apparently it's an experience just to have the honor of stepping in a WWE ring. I mean, it seems like trust me, I would love to step in a WWE ring too. Just I'm not even a wrestler. I'm not even a wrestler. It'd be awesome. But if I was a wrestler, I would want to get paid at least any time after the first time.
Well, so like if you wrestle for if you actually go do like extra work on Raw or SmackDown or NXT or you do a match there, you'll get paid by WWE. It's the affiliate companies that take advantage of it. So it's like Gabe who runs Evolve, Gabe Sapolsky who runs Evolve, who's getting a salary from WWE, who also, he obviously is making money off of Evolve and has been for years. He was the original Ring of Honor booker, and all that's kind of, he's Paul Heyman's protege. That's kind of where he got his, that's kind of like his credibility. He uses the fact that he works for WWE to get guys to work for free for him on an independent show, which is Evolve. And then on top of that, obviously he goes, yeah, you have to do these seminars. So you have to pay money to come do these seminars with these people. And if you don't pay money, which is like hundreds of dollars a lot of times, or they'll get like William Regal in, or they'll get like Adam Cole in, or they'll get some WWE wrestler in to run a seminar. And guess what? If you come to the seminar and you show a good attitude, they'll put in a good word for you to make sure that you go here, or I'll make sure you have a match that they can watch, and then they can develop a relationship with you, and that's your ticket to make it. And they bend you over a barrel, man. There's no other way to put it.
Right.
They take advantage of the fact that you need exposure to work. or to make money. And if you, especially early on, if you have no power, no one knows you, it's hard to say no,
Right.
because you're put in that position. Because if you screw up, then maybe when's the chance going to come up again? Especially someone like Gabe, who's notoriously a bit of like a bit of a child when it comes to hearing the wrong things said or things he doesn't like. It is pretty ridiculous. That's why, though, on an independent level, what we're trying to do over here is to make sure that nobody works for free. I mean, I think that anybody who puts any effort, any labor into a show that is making money should get paid. I think ring crew should get paid. I think every single person who's working the show should get paid. And we have to establish a new minimum,
Right.
you know, because this is accepted. We have to educate wrestlers from training schools on. We have to educate promoters as well that offering zero is not acceptable, and we also have to tell wrestlers accepting zero is not acceptable. And then we have to have their backs when they don't accept zero. And we have to stand up for them and make sure they don't get zero.
I was a huge Ring of Honor fan during Ring of Honor's peak. You know, like 2000, what is it? 2006, 2007, 2000. When it's, you know, when you got Bryan Danielson, you got Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, Chris Hero, Cesaro, who wasn't Cesaro then.
Claudio
Castagnoli, right? Kevin Steen, who was, El Generico, who's Sami Zayn now, and you know, Kevin Steen is Kevin Owens now.
Sami Zayn, also a Bernie supporter.
He is, right. And who else? Jeez, Seth Rollins when he was Tyler Black. You know, it was
Austin Aries.
It was the and I would go to all the Hammerstein Ballroom shows. I was obsessed with Ring of Honor. To me, nothing. It wasn't quite there, but nothing had ever come closer to me than ECW at its peak, than Ring of Honor during that time. It just felt like the counterculture pro wrestling product that nothing had ever existed like that since ECW. I mean, one thing I noticed, though, when I was going to these shows, though, were all the guys that were the ring crew and such were from their wrestling school. And you never saw these guys work a match, or if they did, they would job out in a dark match before the show really was supposed to start or whatever. And I'm sure they weren't getting paid, or if they were just getting paid probably whatever it cost them to get there. And look what ended up happening. WWE ends up hiring all that talent, all these guys that were going to the Ring of Honor school that they could have been building up this whole time as their next generation of stars. They didn't bother doing that. So when all these main guys left for WWE or elsewhere, Ring of Honor had no one. And I don't think they've ever been at that point since, because they lost. They had the strongest roster ever, I think, in terms of straight up wrestling talent in the U.S. at least. And they just didn't build up any of their homegrown talent. And then look what happened. I don't even know where some of those guys are nowadays.
Well, so I mean, obviously, I think that was like kind of the golden era of indie wrestling, with like that when Punk was down there and stuff like that. Like the summer of Punk is like the coolest angle ever. Like CM Punk is arguably the best indie wrestler ever.
I knew about Punk and Ring of Honor, but I actually missed going to anything live when Punk was in Ring of Honor. But still, it was literally that same time period after where they were. I remember when they brought in Morishima from Japan, and he was that guy's him versus
Kobashi. They brought in Kobashi. They took the Kobashi wrestle.
I got to see Misawa live without going to Japan. Something that many people will never be able to do. It was a fantastic time in Ring of Honor. And I mean, and I'm bringing this up during this podcast too. It's not just a wrestling talk, but I mean, here we have another example of like, you know, a promotion didn't do good by the people who were there, the lowest of the low in the totem pole. And then like what the fuck happened to Brian Dempsey, who at least got pops when he was a student who was actually an in-ring character. He wasn't really a wrestler, he was a character. I mean, he was a wrestler, but they didn't use him as a wrestler during that time period. He was a character. He was getting loud pops because he just had natural charisma, and they never did anything with him. At least maybe they did at the time when I stopped watching Ring of Honor as loyally as I was during that time period. But I haven't heard of Brian Dempsey in years. Why, like, what happened to these
Well,
guys?
well, Ring of Honor, in my opinion, I mean, they have some of the best. They have some of the best talent even now, but they've changed their model. They haven't really, like, Ring of Honor when they were at their peak was kind of like the idea of making indie wrestling mainstream. That was really what, like, Ring of Honor was. They brought, like, a production value to it. They sold, like, a bunch of stuff. It was great. It was the closest thing to ECW that they had. ECW's biggest problem was they got too big too fast, and they couldn't afford to pay people properly or whatever. Also, didn't help that Paul Heyman. I mean, obviously, I mean, I love Paul Heyman as a wrestling character, and when I hear him talk about wrestling, I love his shoot interviews and stuff, his opinions. But I mean, obviously, he was a really shitty business guy.
Right. I mean,
So it seems.
maybe Vince needs to take a lesson there. He obviously has a great mind for the wrestling business, the opposite of Paul Heyman. But when it comes to the creative end, he really needs to take a back seat at this point.
Well, Paul Heyman's an amazing booker. I mean, that's been pretty apparent throughout the years.
Right.
Ring of Honor's changed their model after a while. Once Sinclair Broadcasting bought them and they started becoming nationally televised, it just seems like the idea of what kind of wrestler they should be looking for changed. It used to be they'd pluck all of the top indie guys and they'd put them on Ring of Honor, and it was this big super show all the time. And at some point that just changed. Maybe it was after, because I mean they had Jim Cornette booking Ring of Honor for a while, and he was so bad at that job that I think he booked like a no finish in Rahway, New Jersey, and the crowd started chanting "Fire Cornette" and started throwing trash in the ring because they were so upset about this non-finish, this ridiculous angle that he booked, just because he wasn't in touch with current day indie wrestling. And then I don't know what that signaled to them, but things seemed to change from there. When guys went to WWE, they started looking for people that were more, I don't know, standard TV wrestlers as opposed to like what you'd see. But they still what you'd see on the indies now. But they still have great guys. Like they still have guys. I mean, Jay Lethal is amazing. Jonathan Gresham's unbelievable. They have Mark Haskins wrestling over there. They have a lot of guys and Brody King, and so many guys out there are really awesome. They're awesome wrestlers. But it's just Ring of Honor just kind of, they're in their own little bubble now. Obviously they're really, and besides, like, I don't think the talent is really the problem. I just think that the management itself is terrible. But there's a lot of issues with Ring of Honor when it comes to how they treat wrestlers too. For the longest time, they weren't giving their guys catering. I mean, Sinclair Broadcast is a $3 billion company.
Are the Ring of Honor guys you mentioned though? Did they come up in Ring of Honor, or did they make their?
No.
Yeah, that's what I'm. That's like they had a
No.
they had a school. Delirious is Delirious still teaching over there?
Yeah, I believe Hunter's still that guy. Yeah.
Delirious was a great. I don't know what's going on with him now. I don't know his.
I believe he's still the head booker at Ring of Honor, and I don't know if he's still the trainer, but I was training at the Ring of Honor school a little bit here and there, and he was the head trainer, and he was a great trainer.
But
I mean,
my bringing that up though, my point is sort of just like even these wrestling promotions with name who have the ability to make their own talent. It seems like they drop their job at the detriment to the workers themselves. I mean, imagine who would be the top stars in Ring of Honor right now if they let some of those guys. I'm trying to think of someone on Tyler Rex. He was probably the one student who was actually given an opportunity in Ring of Honor. Imagine if they actually built him up during that period and let him go with one of the many stars that are now in WWE during that time period.
Well, there's an interesting thing that you're bringing up here, which is the idea of basically rewarding your students, your homegrown, your talent that starts from the ground up with you. And it is interesting because what a place like Ring of Honor does do, specifically, this is a very, very Ring of Honor thing that they do with their students, is they tell them to come and, be ring crew and do all that stuff, be security, show up early, stay late, do all that. They do get paid, which is one of the few places that does pay their ring crew, and you do ring crew as long as it's like official. There's some weird paperwork thing. I don't think every single one of them gets paid, but I think a lot of them do. But either way, they told them to do that. And then meanwhile, these guys who are training at the school, they're told to reserve their dates that Ring of Honor is running to be ring crew and security, and then they don't take dates where they could go out there wrestling, getting better, becoming more familiar with an audience, and then the people that Ring of Honor use are the people that get themselves over with the audience and go get themselves as great wrestlers, and that's how it works. So they expect loyalty from these wrestlers, and they'll say, oh yeah, do this, do this, do this, and it'll look good to show face, it'll look good to do that, but meanwhile, they book all the guys who get themselves over everywhere else. So every time I talk to these guys who are training at Ring of Honor, I go, that's great. If you don't have a booking or don't have an offer to go somewhere on that day, then go to the Ring of Honor show and do your ring crew. Of course, like, yeah, it makes sense. But if you get offered a booking, take the booking. Like, you have to get yourself over. That's the way, like, they don't want you to have power. And the way you get power is by getting popular. If you get popular, it creates a demand for people to see you. And if there's demand for people to see you, you can ask for more money. And then it's just how it works. So a lot of times these companies trick people into thinking that the way to get in is to be just their humble servant. And they don't care about that. They don't want that. These places have cutthroat thought processes themselves. So why would they think some passive approach is going to do the job? Like, why do you think they would want somebody who's going to be passive? That's
right. I just have to correct myself. Actually, I said Tyler Rex. I realized he was a WWE guy with like the surfer gimmick.
Yeah,
that's not who I meant. I meant Rhett Titus.
Oh, Rhett Titus, Romantic Touch. He's great. So he was with Kenny King, and then Kenny King took a better deal with Impact. And then Rhett got Rhett's awesome, and I think he still does wrestle for Ring of Honor. Rhett's great.
But he was one of the few students who were actually given the in-ring opportunity during that era where they had all these big stars. And imagine they just gave their own homegrown talent who were paying them money, who were literally giving them money. Imagine they were like, all right, let's throw these guys a friggin' bone here and let them go at least, have a great match with I don't know, Steen or Danielson. Even if they lose, but it'll build them up. And then when those guys are gone, this guy will be able to be a star. But they didn't do that.
Well, no, that would be that. No, they don't do that because they make it easy because it's the same thing that WWE is doing now with plucking the indie guys, and the same thing all the corporate wrestling companies are doing by plucking all the top indie guys, and it's because they develop a fan base themselves, and that corporation wants to bring in that fan base to buy their merchandise and buy their tickets. So that's what they want you to do. So of course they don't. If you're not doing anything, you're just building up this little small thing. Maybe you're getting some familiarity with the fan base, maybe because they know you as the security guy or the ringside guy or whatever, and they'll see you do a job here and there, and they feel like they're connected to you. But if you go get yourself over other places, I'm telling you what, you're going to be a lot more valuable. And you're a lot more likely to get booked. But I'm honestly with that stuff, I'm not as concerned with that because I do think there is a thing where we have to tell people to go out and get themselves over and go get booked. And don't fall into that bubble. Don't get lost in the bubble. I have more of an issue with the fact that that Sinclair Broadcasting owns Ring of Honor. They don't care about taking a loss because Sinclair uses it as a tax write-off, but they still nickel and dime guys. Like they don't always have medics backstage. They didn't have a concussion policy until they had they only have medics backstage when it's literally required by like the state law. So and it's like bare minimum stuff they're doing. They up until a point, I just heard about them finally giving their guys catering. They weren't feeding or providing any sort of things like that for the wrestlers at all. Again, owned by a $3 billion company, not giving them catering. They weren't giving them single hotel rooms. They had a room with people. They were nickel and diming them there. They had to get rental cars and stuff like that. They had to ask for reimbursement. They separated. They had an HR person for Ring of Honor, and wrestlers. There was a women's wrestler who made a complaint, issued a complaint of harassment, went to the HR person, and then all of a sudden that claim just disappeared. And then she approached management and was like, "Hey, I made this claim," and they said, "Yeah, well, see, that's for employees, and you're an independent contractor." And so they do stuff like that. Joe Koff, who is I believe he's the COO or the CEO of Ring of Honor. I don't know which three-letter word he's going on or three-letter acronym he's going off of these days. But yeah, he's just really not a good person, and he's really not a good business owner. He doesn't care about the wrestlers. At one point, he came in yelling that guys shouldn't have their own merchandise stores, so they wanted Ring of Honor to have it, while giving them trying to give people less than 5% of merchandise deals cut from the Ring of Honor store. They are doing the same stuff that they fought against for so long. The more established they come, more establishment they become. That's just how it seems to have been. And Ring of Honor's gone down that path, and that's been pretty sucks a lot.
Yeah,
Man.
I feel like that's when I stopped getting it. I was no longer really into Ring of Honor. You know, a combination of Sinclair and then all that talent leaving, and it was just, it was a completely different company. It didn't even look like the same company anymore. And the WWE actually does. If you get signed by the WWE, you can leave the WWE eventually, and you actually will. Correct me if I'm wrong. Actually, see a noticeable bump in the amount of money you could ask for because you are now a WWE superstar. Whereas, if Ring of Honor takes advantage of you and you leave Ring of Honor, you don't get that bump. It's not. No one's going out to see a former Ring of Honor superstar.
No, yeah, not it's not as much, but that just goes to show you the monopoly power that WWE's had because they've made themselves the Coca-Cola of pro wrestling. They've made themselves Coca-Cola. Let's put it that way. Because whenever someone asks me if they go, "Oh, what do you do?" and I say I'm a pro wrestler, they'll say, like, "Oh, like WWE." Like every time I go to the border and I have to tell them what I'm doing there, and I say, "Yeah, I'm wrestling." They go, "Oh, like what kind of wrestling?" I say, "Pro wrestling." "Oh, WWE." And I just go, "Yeah." Because that's what it is. That's what people know.
You should drop. Do you want to buy my autograph? I'm a WWE superstar.
Oh man, yeah. So you're talking to her now. You could probably
actually get away with a lot of those people. Probably just know the names, don't know what they look like. You probably be like, you're talking to the one and only Randy Orton, buddy. You should.
They'd be like, you're way shorter than I thought you were. Funny enough, little side story. There's things. So my girlfriend always yells at me or makes fun of me because she'll say, "You're not famous." To me, like just to be like, "You're not famous," and every single time she says that, somebody happens to see me on the street and recognize me. It only happens when she's there, and it only happens when she says that I'm not famous. And then I think there was another time recently with her where we weren't being let into a bar for some reason, and I was a little drunk, and I showed. This is such a dickhead move, but whatever, it worked. But then I showed the bouncer my Twitter account, which just recently got a blue check mark, and then he let us in.
I honestly thought you were going to be like, and then I lifted up my T-shirt, and I just happened to be wearing
No!
my world title belt.
That would definitely keep me out of a bar. I think. That's like the type of person that you don't want to have in a bar. But yeah, these places. I don't even remember what I was going off. I was just kind of going off on one quite a bit there. But WWE gives you a name. It does give you like the platform it gives you. It gives you validation. It makes you credible moving forward. If you can have that WWE logo on your indie, like when they book you on an indie show and it says former WWE wrestler, people go, "Oh, okay, that guy's legit." Especially the casual fan, obviously the one who's not necessarily following all the time. Family shows, stuff like that. You can up your rate because you've now been seen on such a big platform, and that's the sort of stuff they hold over our heads. And now in this day and age of corporate competition again in pro wrestling, this is the time. Well, now not so much because obviously the coronavirus and everything is shutting everything down. But when we get the other side of this, or prior to this was like the time period for wrestlers to really take advantage of the situation because we're the ones who are in demand. Make them compete for us. Bring our prices up. Make demands now because we can. We have the power. We always have had the power, but it's more and more apparent.
Right. So what do you think happens when, who knows, this could be, some people are hoping in a few weeks. Some people, experts seem to be saying at least a few months. Other people are saying that this could be a year, even, a year and a half I've seen for the vaccine, if that's even a thing. What do you think, and maybe this is after I just said those time periods, maybe on a lot of people's minds, other than pro wrestlers and the industry themselves, maybe they're not wondering when pro wrestling is coming back. But what do you think happens to pro wrestling after this? Because I got to assume that that there will be less indies, maybe, unfortunately. I've seen that WrestleCon was really worried that they were gonna. WrestleCon's this big wrestling convention that goes wherever WrestleMania goes. They're not affiliated with the WWE, but they basically go wherever WrestleMania goes and sets up many different events, signings. It's a big wrestling convention that just follows WWE around every year, and they were gonna lose a lot of money because the hotels weren't gonna give them their refund, and they were basically saying, we basically just make enough money each year to do this. And if we lose that money without holding the event, then we can't do this anymore. It seems like they'll be getting at least most of their money back now, it seems. But, you got to wonder if there's going to be other organizations out there who don't have that high profile that were able to sort of shame the companies into doing the right thing. Like,
well, yeah. No, you're right. Because, I mean, Marriott was trying to charge High Spots. High Spots is the one who runs WrestleCon. Which is highspots.com. It's like a wrestling merchandise place. You can get DVDs and you can buy wrestling rings from High Spots, stuff like that. So yeah, Marriott was trying to hold them on the hook for like over $100,000. It was like $114,000, I think. And thankfully, the state of Florida basically canceled all events, so they were covered. So then Marriott wasn't going to go after them anymore. But there are a lot of companies. Like you're right when you say there's going to be less indie companies. That's probably a thing. But one of the things that I've been trying to say to a lot of these companies, a lot of people in general, is that we have to professionalize professional wrestling. And the companies that have the best chance of possibly getting bailed out as a small business, whether that's through a government grant program or whether that's through literal reimbursement of losses that they've sustained throughout this crisis, the ones who have done it legit are going to be the first ones in line if they're able to. There are a lot of companies that resist the idea of being pro wrestling, like actual professional companies, because it's they want to be punk. They don't want real jobs. They don't want to do that. But guess what? This is a real job, and it has to be taken care of properly. And the companies that are doing it the right way, that are reporting their money, they're paying their taxes, they're doing all that, are going to be the first ones to have the opportunity to possibly get something from the government. But this goes, I've said this a bunch of times now, but this all does come back to the government not acting appropriately. And because it has to just be mandate the shutdown, stop all outgoing payments, sorry.
No, you could curse, it doesn't matter. I said John fucking Cena earlier, so trust me, it's fine.
I didn't say that. That's just his full name, I thought.
Yeah.
But these companies that didn't do anything legit, they're going to get screwed by the fact, like, with the government. Oh no, that was what I was getting at. Government needs to make this firm mandating lockdown so that there's no financial responsibility anymore for these companies, so that there's no excuse to possibly be running. So that there's no payment should have to be happening. Airlines need to refund their money and then probably get nationalized. But all of these things need to take place. The government has to take this action so these companies can get bailed out. And the companies that are going to get bailed out, if there's going to be any that do, are going to be the ones that have been doing it legit in the right way the whole time. So this should be more and more incentive coming out of this, that you should want to professionalize your company. But unfortunately, there's probably a lot that are going to go under because airlines are screwing over people, travel agencies are screwing people, hotels are screwing people, event insurance is screwing people over, and it's going to be rough, man. So we'll see who comes out the other side, and it's going to be really sad to see that a lot of companies are going to be closed down. A lot of guys aren't going to be able to be full-time indie wrestlers anymore. They're going to have to get other jobs again. And it sucks because we have like a really cool thing going.
Yeah, I think one thing I really want to drive home in this episode is because the conversation right now about healthcare, especially with the coronavirus, is like, in the U.S. if we had healthcare for everybody, Medicare for all, or any sort of system where everyone was covered, period. I feel like so much issues with obviously a lot of companies, but with professional wrestling would be solved. Like, for example, going back to punk rock, I would run punk shows when I was young. Like, I would not just be in a band, I would put together shows. and I was never worried about the money side of it or someone getting hurt side of it, because it's a punk show. What's most that's gonna happen to someone? They get knocked in the tooth with some they lose a tooth or whatever from an instrument hitting them or whatever. No one gets really hurt, and money wise, you could just give the bands the money to and a couple $100, depending on who they are, their guarantee, whatever. Local bands, obviously, less than the traveling bands. Not much money going around, obviously, but with indie shows, I would love to hold pro wrestling events, but I would never do it because there is more money needed, obviously, because you need ring rental and but I would never be able to like, if a wrestler got hurt at a show I held, obviously with all the other issues for myself too, I would never be able to forgive myself. I'd probably go into a deep depression. Like, it's like, because I would not be able to financially do anything for them, and I would feel responsible, and it would be sort of my responsibility too. If they had healthcare covered and I knew they were fine, I would love to hold a wrestling event. It would be
Sure.
that would be so easy, not just for pro wrestlers, but I feel like there'd be more people be able to put together pro wrestling shows. Anyone could put together a band, a show with a couple bands. There's not much to it. You rent out a small venue, you make sure there's speakers and a PA system, and have at it. But with the pro wrestling show, if someone gets hurt, that's it, man. You're basically, you got someone's life on the line there. These are guys I couldn't do that to you.
True.
Yeah,
well, I mean, I appreciate the care you'd have there, and there are a lot of promotions that do have, obviously no one wants anyone to get hurt. I don't think anyone wishes injury on anybody. But one of the things we're trying to do is we want to make sure that medics are going to be at shows live. Medics there, live, present, they're competent, they're qualified, and that's one of the parts of our agreement that we've been sending out and that we've already had a bunch of different companies verbally agree to. So that in the UK over here and a bunch of companies in the US, they're already agreeing to ensure that there is going to be a medic at all their shows. And obviously, it blows my mind that, I mean, thinking about when I wrestled in the US, well, I still wrestle in the US sometimes. Well, again, we're talking about in a normal world. Past this and before this whole coronavirus thing, I was wrestling in the U.S. still every once in a while. And the more I thought about it, the more it blows my mind that I wasn't terrified to wrestle in the U.S. before because of healthcare implications. Because when I'm here, when I'm here in the UK, and if I get hurt, I can just go to the hospital. Or when I'm wrestling in Europe, pretty much anywhere, I can just go to the hospital if I need to, and it's not a worry. So I mean, it's crazy that we don't have this sort of system in place. And it's also crazy because, like, this is something that you'd think would be intersect, would be these major promoters such as the Khans and such as the McMahons and all of them. You'd think that this issue of healthcare would be paramount because they don't want their guys to get hurt. So you'd think they'd be investing in pushing for pro single payer advertisements and pushing for this pro single payer legislation so that they don't have to worry about healthcare for their employees and for their wrestlers. You'd think that, but obviously they don't because they still value their money more. It is really, it's scary, man. There's deathmatch wrestlers in the U.S. so much, and there's deathmatch wrestlers here in the U.K. And I'm like, man, I would do a deathmatch in the U.K. a million times before I'd do a deathmatch in the U.S. And I've done most of my deathmatches that I've been in the U.S. and I don't even think about it. It's like you just don't go to the doctor. It's just not something that people do.
I'll never forget at an indie show, a couple hundred people. I went to the public bathroom after one of the matches, like the bathroom in the venue, like not like the backstage bathroom, like the bathroom everyone, the audience was using and whatever. And there was Necro Butcher. His politics aside, and there was Necro Butcher literally pulling glass shards out of his back, like himself.
Oh man! Yeah.
And it was just like, man, this is depressing. Like, I love the guy and I appreciate what he does, but don't do this to yourself. It made me so depressed. It's like, he's a MAGA guy. He's a MAGA guy, of course, but
he's a big MAGA guy. But it is what it is. I mean, like, I've actually never had the pleasure of meeting Necro Butcher.
And this was years ago too, when he looked like he was still in his late 30s, maybe late 40s. Not how he looks now, where he looks like he's 85 years old. I don't know what the hell happened to him. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I mean I think he's got some health issues and stuff like that. But yeah, we do a lot of self care. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. I have a little massage gun thing, one of those Thera guns that I have that here in my flat, and we use the hell out of that all the time. And well, obviously, healthcare costs are so cheap here. I'm able to see a physio, which is like a combination of like a massage therapist and chiropractor, and just it's just an angel sent from heaven who just works on my back and my legs and my neck and every single thing that I need. He'll work on it for like $45, and it's amazing. But guys in the U.S., we don't have that. I was riding in a car with Masada one time. It was 3 days after he had done Cage of Death, and Masada all of a sudden he wasn't feeling really well, and him and I were wrestling that night. We were driving to Ohio. I was wrestling him that night. In the middle of the ring, he wasn't feeling really well. In the middle of the ring, all of a sudden, no, this is 3 days after he had done Cage of Death. Glass and tubes and all the craziness. Every single possible thing that cuts you up and hurts a lot was happening. He, in the middle of the match, just leans over the side, like goes to the ropes, and just squeezes out like a shard of glass that was in his arm still. That he thought he didn't even realize it was there. And then he let it out, and then he goes, "Oh, I feel," and he said, "Oh, I feel so much better," because he was obviously he had a foreign object inside his body still. That stuff happened because he didn't have health insurance because he couldn't afford to go to the hospital. He didn't know. He didn't have himself looked after like that, and that's a huge issue.
I'm gonna start like an anti-deathmatch wrestling campaign for you.
No,
just as a fan, just as a fan, just as a fan. But you,
oh no,
I've honestly never been a big deathmatch fan. I mean, I enjoy the occasional, weapon spot. ECW, I think,
sure.
minus the New Jack stuff, usually did a good job. Not going overboard. Later on, I just got the image of the scaffold matches in my head, so I should need to clarify. I'm talking, like when it was Dudley's versus somebody, and they'd bring out the tables, and now it is pretty much, again, minus New Jack. I guess Balls Mahoney would take the chair shots. Man,
yeah, a lot of unprotected chair shots there, man.
Yeah.
No, I mean, like, so I love deathmatch wrestling, but I don't like people doing dumb stuff to themselves all the time. Like, there's a difference. It's like there's a difference between like good deathmatch wrestling, good hardcore wrestling, and gratuitous hardcore wrestling or gratuitous deathmatch wrestling. And I don't like gratuitous wrestling, period. I don't like random flippy matches for no reason. I like it. Like, I like guys who can do that stuff, and I like their matches. But there's a time when people are just doing it gratuitously. Right. Same thing with death matches. Same thing with all sorts of every style of match can go overboard and kind of like overdo the gimmick to death.
That's sort of what I'm thinking. Like, when someone is jumping through stacks of tube lighting multiple times in a match, I'm usually like, okay, enough. Come on.
Oh, dude, you guys gotta watch. You gotta watch some really good deathmatch stuff. Or you gotta watch some Nick Gage.
Oh, I've seen CCW, man, and that stuff is too much for me. I prefer to the non. The image of Mick the image of Mick Foley his face painted red in the Japanese death matches. Let's keep it in the 90s.
Oh, it's so sick. Well, if you want to, like one of these companies in America, and actually Northeast, if you ever seen Beyond Wrestling has like a variety of everything. They have they have an all women's promotion. They have a bunch of intergender wrestling matches, which are really cool, and it's kind of like their thing. They have like great tag matches, great like scrambles. They have great tech matches. They have good hardcore matches when they do those. Beyond is kind of like a mixture of them all. So if you want to see good indie wrestling, I think it's based in they're mostly in like Worcester, Massachusetts. So that's kind of like their home base right now. They used to be originally from Providence, but yeah, you'll see it all there, and they get the top indie stars that come in. It's always Beyond Wrestling is always a good time.
I guess I'm just more of a fan of good spots and fast back and forth and
you get that too, man.
Yeah.
like that. Well, that's and funny enough, you mentioned CZW. CZW has a great history of like great junior heavyweight wrestling as well, like Trent Acid, and Winger and Jimmy Rave and Chris Hero and Claudio and all these guys were
Oh,
out
right,
there
right, right.
first.
I'm when I say CZW though, I'm strictly talking their
Tournament
infamous, yeah. And that to me, it's always like, oh, come
so awesome.
For me, it's
Oh,
come
it's so
on,
awesome.
it's come on. I can't.
I understand. No, I understand. There's plenty of things that get me like, oh no, like oh god. But I just love it. I love deathmatch wrestling too, and I personally like doing death matches when I've done them. It's really messed up, and I understand it's twisted, and I've prefaced it with this. I'm seeing a therapist, so don't worry about it. But I feel the best mentally and emotionally after a death match.
Honestly, if it's a death match in front of a couple thousand people and you guys are getting paid good, that's cool with me. If you see those indie shows where it's a couple dozen people, if even that, and someone's walking away with cuts and blood all over their body and tube lighting coming out of their head and that's what I'm like. Man, you're not getting paid enough to do this. Why are you going all out right?
I can assure you that if you see me doing a death match, I'm being paid
right.
plenty more than my normal rate, and I'm comfortable with the number. But actually, funny enough that you just said that, one of the things that we've been talking about putting into our agreement that we've come up with, we the independent have come up with working with Equity, is to ensure that wrestlers get hazard pay when they have hardcore matches, guaranteeing them wage increases for them being asked to do dangerous spots and stuff.
Right. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, listen, I'm someone who's all for, because again, going back to the old school band stuff, I always think, no matter how many people are in the audience, you go all out regardless. But the deathmatch thing to me is a little bit different. If you're doing something like that, you could put on an hour-long wrestling clinic in front of 10 people, and that's great. If you're walking away from a deathmatch and you just broke your arm and you did it in front of 10 people for $50, that's not worth it.
On the same, funny enough you say that, there is a deathmatch wrestling legend, who's Danny Havoc, who's the man. He's great, and he's a sick deathmatch wrestler, great proper wrestler as well. But he would actually charge more to do like a normal wrestling match than he would to do a death match, because he would say would say taking all those bumps and doing all that stuff as a normal match is a lot more damaging to my body than getting myself all cut up. Getting myself cut up is all surface level stuff. So he'd rather do all that than taking bumps all day long.
That's interesting.
Typically in death matches, if you notice, they might do more high risk spots, especially given the hazardous material around that can break and cut you up and stuff. But you don't usually have to take as many actual bumps, which every bump is basically like a little mini car crash.
Right.
And you don't have to do those as much because you're getting bigger reactions, so you have more time in between to kind of sell and let things really be registered by the audience.
Right. So what you're saying is the best play to make the most money in pro wrestling is to become a famous deathmatch wrestler, and then right when you're at your peak, you only do regular normal wrestling matches.
That's right. That's what you do. So you do. Exactly.
So
that's the trick.
So you get super famous, and then you charge more for all the matches because you're no longer because you're doing the real wrestling stuff now.
Yeah, I do feel bad for some of these guys. Like a lot of these deathmatch guys are actually like so good wrestlers, and they don't get the opportunity to do it because everyone kind of like just books them into a corner, and they're like, oh yeah, well, you can only do hardcore matches. Like, no, they're mad good. Like, give them a chance. Like Nick Gage is the man. Nick Gage, Ricky Shane Page is great. Those are two prominent deathmatch wrestlers. They're awesome. Matt Tremont is a great brawler, like great wrestler, one of the most charismatic dudes there is out there. There's Mance Warner is really awesome. Another guy who does death matches like a lot of the time. Masada is amazing. Masada is an amazing wrestler, an amazing death match wrestler specifically as well. There's a lot of these guys can go out there and can put on a show, man. Go death match wrestlers to do proper matches.
All right. So yeah, David, this has been great. I'm so happy this was you came on the show. Oh yeah, there's one more thing I wanted to ask you. I don't know if you want to talk about this,
sure.
But it was actually, let me get to this because we have one question from a super chat and I want to make sure we get to that. Renee is asking you, what is your favorite wrestling move, and what is your favorite? I don't think this is. I like that first question, but this next one, what's your favorite wrestling pose? So I guess you're.
Wrestling pose.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that one. I guess he means taunt or whatever. I don't know, but the move one I'm
No,
interested in.
pose is probably like a taunt.
Yeah,
Like, what's my favorite taunt? Well, I mean, if it's a pose by itself, the one that, whenever I think of a wrestling pose, the first one that comes to my head, even though we just trash WWE all the time, I love Randy Orton as a wrestler. I think he's amazing.
I don't know why, but when I hear the specific word pose, he's the only
I think
one
of
I
Randy
honestly
Orton.
think of. Yeah, I wonder why that is. Because if you said taunt, I would have probably thought the Hogan U. I would have thought
Yeah.
the Stone Cold, fingers, any of the Rock, or the John Cena's thing. But pose, there's only
Yeah.
one pose in pro wrestling.
Randy Orton.
Yeah.
Randy Orton. That's what I think of when I think of a pose. So I guess I can say it. I can say it, that one. My favorite move, is that like my personal favorite move, or is it like one that I enjoy watching being performed? Because the thing that I could think of off the top of my head, the first thing that came to my head wasn't even a move that's ever been done, and it's not physically. It's impossible to do it. But back when you first started being able to create a move in the video game, there used to be like little sections and stuff. So my friend and I, from when I was a kid, we created a move, and it was a shooting star spear. Which shooting star is when you stand on the top rope, or it doesn't have to stand on the top rope, but in this case we had him standing on the top rope, and you do like, basically I'm facing the ring and I do like a moonsault, but my body goes forward. The move was invented by Jushin Thunder Liger, who's like the greatest junior heavyweight of all time. It's called a shooting star press. So when I was creating this move on, like, I think it was like SmackDown 2000 something, I don't know, we set up the guy to do a shooting star off the top, and it said like the next bit that you could pick for the move, and for whatever reason a spear was an option. So the guy literally would go, did the spear, or did the shooting star in the midair, and then just like shot out of the cannon before even hitting the ground. So the shooting star spear is my favorite move ever.
I
and
like
it could
that.
never be done. I'm laying out a challenge to Will Ospreay or Ricochet, these guys, or Pac maybe even, the three best high flyers probably ever, to do a double shooting star press, like, because they've done double moonsaults before.
Right.
I want to see a double shooting star press. I also don't want to see anybody die. So if you can do that safely, do it.
So who do you think could do it? You said Pac. Who else do you think could do it?
Pac, Ricochet, or Will Ospreay. I think those would be the three guys who could do it.
What about Evan Bourne, Matt Sydal? Think he could pull that off?
Oh, he's great.
Yeah.
Oh, he can't. I mean, if he's a Bernie supporter as well.
Yeah, that actually I actually know him sort of.
Okay.
Because of that. Yes, he is.
He's a great dude. I love hanging out with him. But he couldn't do a double shooting star.
Oh.
His single shooting star though is so pretty. It's so ridiculous.
See, that's why I think he could, because if you could float like that in like slow motion, you think you'd be able to get the extra turn in, right?
You know what? Maybe he could. Maybe he could. I'm not gonna actually. I'll say he can't. Right. For the challenge, you know what I mean? If he hears it,
I can tell you that I cannot do a shooting star press normally. So it's
I can't do a moonsault.
I can't do a moonsault either. So there you go.
There you go. But what life purpose does doing a moonsault ever have? Like, that's what I don't know how some of these guys who do some of this flip stuff.
For a young Matt Binder who wanted to become a pro wrestler for a long time, I could tell you not being able to do a moonsault is one of the reasons I did not even attempt to.
So when my first time ever getting into a pro wrestling ring was at the Wild Spoon Training Center, which is where I trained originally under Samu Anawai, who you might know from the Head Shrinkers, or he's Wild Spoon number 3 as well. So the Wild Spoons had this ring in which the canvas, like the actual ring, could be set lower or higher depending on if they were in a building that had a low ceiling. So they could set the ring lower if you need to do like a suplex if the ceiling was too low. So the first time I got in the ring was set lower. But the ropes didn't come down with it, so the ropes were so high. And my whole life I'm being told, you're too small, you can never be a pro wrestler, this is never going to happen.
How tall are you?
All that stuff. I'm 5'9" on a good day when I stretch.
Okay, well, you got 5 feet on me on a good day, so.
Well, I tell you what.
I mean, 5 inches. Excuse me, 5 inches. I am not 9 inches tall.
this is so impressive. You don't even know for a 9-inch man. But so WWE, when I had my performance center tryout, I got measured in my boots at 5'10" and 3/4 inches. So I could tell you, I could basically lie myself to 6 foot when I'm in the ring. I think, but I don't because I have character and I'm a principled person. You know what I mean?
Right.
No one's gonna think
Right.
that I'm 6 foot tall. So come on, let's stop it. But so when I'm going into the ring, told too small, all that, I get up to the ring. I'm like, oh my god, this is the biggest moment of my life. I'm getting into a pro wrestling ring for the first time ever. And I get up to the ropes, and I couldn't even get my leg over the second rope because the ropes were so high. And the first thing I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not supposed to be doing. So that was extremely discouraging. Not to mention that I'm deceptively unathletic. I keep myself grounded for a reason. I can't do moonsaults or flips or any of that stuff.
Oh,
I'm a real.
let me tell you, when I was thinking about becoming a pro wrestler, I already had it all planned out. Anyone asked me who my wrestling, like who I was trying to emulate the most in terms of like wrestling style, I already had it planned out. Not a big guy, no strength, not athletic in any way, shape, or form. I'm gonna be a Dean Malenko submission specialist.
Wow. Okay.
Not saying Dean
Well,
Malenko is not talented, but it's a style
Great.
that you don't need to do flips. You don't need to be terribly strong. You don't need to be. Am I wrong about that? You would know better than me. This is me just assuming from.
Dean
I'm
Malenko as a base. So like the strength that comes, like that's one of the things that, because pro wrestling is so much like a dance in reality, like especially when it comes to like when you incorporate lucha. And if you watch the match that Dean Malenko had, like being such an international traveler, like the stuff he did with Eddie Guerrero and Psychosis and Juventud and Rey Mysterio and stuff, he has to be a strong
Right,
base.
that's
So he
true.
has to be able to
Right,
be there.
right.
And he's got to be tossed. So actually, there is quite a bit of like there's strength that needs to exist for everybody. You have to be able to hold people up. You have to be able to catch people and safely bring them down. You have to be able to pick them up. So you're gonna have to hit the weights, Matt.
That's
if you want to make this a thing.
Well, I think at 33, it's a little bit. I'm not the next Batista. I'll tell you that much. So, I think
He started at like 40.
yeah, he started late, but again,
Another Bernie supporter. Look at you dropping wrestling Bernie.
he
supporters
is,
left
and
right.
that is the most surprising one to me because made me think about judging a book by its cover. Because if you had told me Batista was a Bernie supporter, not just by how he looks, but also all the things I had heard about him, which may be true or not true, who knows? Would have never assumed he had good politics. So
Yeah, he actually seemed to have his finger on the pulse of the wrestling fan more than WWE did when he had his little run and he returned. Like he wanted to come back as a heel because he thought fans would reject him because he's a part timer. They're like, no, you're going to be this big baby face and we're going to do a big Evolution main event at WrestleMania and the people are going to love it. And people just rejected it like crazy, and that's when they wanted Daniel Bryan. That was WrestleMania 30.
I was never a fan of Batista when he first came in. I didn't like him as a heel, a serious heel. I didn't like him as a face. Look at him. He doesn't look anything like a face should look. He just looks like an asshole, just like by how he looks. But I gained so much respect for him when he finally found himself with, like, the crybaby Batista, because it was so good and it fit so well because it was so... The heel who was sort of also like a jokey character, who was so over the top in his like whining. It was so good, and I gained so much respect for the guy. And then he went on and became a actual good movie star, like actual good actor. And it's like the guy knew all along where his. I mean, because I don't know. I've never spoken to him, but it seemed like he had the most fun with the less serious character he had to play. He didn't like being the serious heel, didn't like being the serious face, but when he got to be, crybaby Batista, he was fantastic. I was like, damn, that guy he was my favorite when he was that whiny Batista character.
I mean, yeah, he was. I mean, I was never really a fan of Batista when I was younger and stuff. I kind of rejected him because I felt like he represented something that I didn't like. Like I was still holding on to my wrestling fandom of before, and I just kind of rejected what he represented. But yeah, he turns out he gets it. He just gets it, and he's entertaining at this point. I mean, he doesn't wrestle anymore, but yeah, he's entertaining, and I've enjoyed his stuff that he's had for a while.
And when I say he looked like an asshole, which made him a better heel than a face, I just want to get this across to everybody. The guy had a belly button tattoo. I'm not cheering for someone who has a belly button tattoo. That's a heel. That motherfucker's a heel. That
If you have a belly button tattoo, you can't be a babyface.
that guy's a heel. I mean, come on. So thank you for giving me so much time. And I did want to bring this up because it's connected to the coronavirus stuff. And if you got to go, just let me know. You have one more minute? Cool.
Yeah, go for it, man.
So sort of the big wrestling thing outside of like the big backstage sort of dirt sheet type wrestling news, like not like part of the storylines or what's going on TV, is this recent thing with WWE wrestler Braun Strowman, when indie wrestler, not even indie wrestler, an AEW guy who's a guy with the second biggest promotion, basically tweeted out how people need to support indie wrestlers like yourself, David Starr, during this time, especially because of the coronavirus. And Braun Strowman, a WWE superstar, comes in and just decides to shit on that idea. Like, why if a indie wrestler can't make it on their own, then they should find another business. He did it after all, and it's like really disappointing to hear this from a WWE guy because they should be out there being the loudest trying to support the guys in their industry who are not in the position they are. The idea to me that Braun Strowman worked hard to get to where he is, probably true. I'm sure he worked very hard. But the idea that a freak of nature, 7-foot behemoth wasn't going to get signed to WWE regardless, I mean, a lot easier than other guys, I could assure you. I mean, it's like a 7-foot guy telling me that, hey, if you just work really hard, you too could become an NBA All-Star. I mean, I probably got to work a little bit harder than you. It's and I want people to, if you're not familiar with who Braun Strowman is, please look him up. I mean, this is a guy who hit the genetic lottery when it comes to becoming a professional wrestler. He's not just very tall like the giant Gonzalez from the 90s was, who did not have a wrestling. This is a guy who was really tall but didn't have a wrestling physique. He was just a former NBA guy who WWE was like, oh, he's tall, let's hire him. So imagine being a tall guy who's also built like a tank. Probably the biggest guy I've ever seen, honestly, in WWE. I mean, there's no one like this. Guy's built bigger than Great Khali. He's taller, it looks like, than Undertaker. I mean, this guy is literally the premier Vince McMahon is gonna sign you guy.
Yeah, no doubt.
Like, so what's your what is your take on this whole thing? I just really disappointed because he seems like a good guy. I mean, I don't know. I haven't heard anything about him being a dick before. People, the dirt sheets don't say anything bad about him. It's just, why would you do this now, especially? I mean,
well, I mean, from starting off with everything, every single person I've ever heard that has worked with Braun Strowman or has been around Braun Strowman or whatever has said that he's awesome. That he's like super cool. That he's like a super nice dude, and he's great to work with, all that stuff. Yeah, I mean, what he said is stupid. I mean, there's no other way to put it. It's a dumb thing to say. It does. He said he moved to Florida with $150 in his pocket, but the fact is that he moved to Florida because he got signed. And that's fine. So he never experienced the indie wrestling grind. He doesn't know what it is. The guy whose picture he commented on.
I forgot about that. He was he was he a strongman or something like that?
Strongman.
And Mark Henry or someone saw him and was just like, we're signing you. Like, he didn't come up in the indies.
Basically.
And like, yeah, listen, he obviously worked hard in the strongman world or whatever. I'm not saying, but like, again, like, you had a lot going for you that added to you getting signed.
Well, there's just differences, which is like when I tweeted about it, I decided not to necessarily attack Braun Strowman and when I tweeted about it, I decided to kind of show a little bit of solidarity because he was talking about how he was not really he made a claim that he wasn't getting paid during this time because he's an independent contractor and only paid, and assuming that he had met his downside guarantee or something like that. If he's not going to be able to work, then they're not going to pay him. That's probably what he was saying, which is ridiculous because these guys don't have sick pay, they can't collect unemployment, all this stuff like that. So I decided to show that strength because there are separate things. So there's a place where I have sympathy for Braun Strowman. Granted, he's not at the top of my sympathy list, but I do because he's underpaid. I think his contract is a $1.2 million guaranteed contract. came out. That's been reported a bunch of places. $1.2 million guaranteed every year, and that's still him being underpaid.
Right.
If you just look at the way the money is broken down in WWE, the way revenue's generated, yeah, they're massively underpaid. Just from a cash flow standpoint, all these other professional sports industries like the NBA, NHL, baseball, they have about 50% of the revenue that gets generated goes towards paying player salaries, whereas WWE is at around 10%. So there's a clear cash flow issue there. So I have sympathy for Braun Strowman in that regard because he should be getting paid more. Maybe he should be getting paid 5 times that. So maybe he should be getting at least a $5 million guarantee based on those kind of numbers. Everyone should be getting paid 5 times more what they're getting now, and that's probably still not enough. But because we don't need owners, that's just how that goes.
Right.
Sports things we
Well, I
don't
mean,
need
when you
owners.
look, but seriously though, when you look at how much other athletes are paid, I mean, it's not even like the top wrestler in WWE. If you just take the money they're making from WWE, probably doesn't even approach like what like a I don't know a name but not superstar status NBA player or
Yeah.
NFL player. You know, like
100%.
it's like there's no.
Well, I would say there is probably a difference between the amount of money that's generated from the NBA or NFL versus WWE, because obviously professional wrestling still is very niche, but it's still, again, just with the numbers, the cash flow breakdown, it's on average about 40% less than what other sports are doing. So obviously wrestlers should be getting paid more relative to the revenue that's being generated.
And they don't get, and even WWE guys don't get comped or taken care of in terms of travel and stuff. So that money they're bringing in is still coming out of their pocket to actually get to the jobs.
Most of them, and what they do, they have this. WWE has set up this thing it's called the Golden Circle. This is what I've heard from guys who used to work there, guys who do work there right now. There's this little it's not an official term, but these guys in the Golden Circle get like better merchandise deals. They get travel covered. They get hotels covered. They get certain like perks for their contracts, and they do it for a few guys so that you all aspire to get there. So they have these different tiers of what gets covered and what doesn't. They don't have just a flat mandate of everybody's travel gets covered, everybody's hotels get covered, all that stuff. They don't have that because they want you to aspire to get it. It's just another ploy in their machine to make sure that everybody works like that. But on the same note, again, all that being said, Braun Strowman's an idiot for saying what he said, and one of the things he said was work harder. Well, Braun, where are we getting hired? Who's hiring now, man? Like, if you could tell me what places you're hiring, we're all out of work. And also understanding that you're talking to the person he was talking to, the comment that he made was on a guy named Player Uno. Player Uno, if you watched Ring of Honor back then, you probably saw the Super Smash Brothers wrestle for Ring of Honor. Before the Young Bucks, Super Smash Brothers were like the indie tag team. And then they got banned from the U.S. and managed to keep themselves alive in Canada and keep themselves relevant. And now they got signed to AEW. Those dudes were on the grind. They understand. Uno understands what it's like to struggle big time. And for someone like Braun Strowman to kind of talk down to him like that, it's disgusting and it's ridiculous. When, like you said, there should be this solidarity being shown throughout your workforce, and that comes from corporate wrestling guys showing solidarity with indie wrestling guys, and vice versa. So we don't need to be fighting each other. Right. We're not the enemy here.
Right. The thing that really bothered me the most about it is sort of like it would be like a dickish thing to say normally, but like you gotta believe even like Kane the Libertarian is not going to jump in and say during this time period with the coronavirus, even he's not going to go to the indie guy and go, you really should be working harder. Like, it's just the complete, like, what did he think was going on? It's
nuts, man.
Like normally it's a dick thing to say, but like, okay, even in your weird worldview, I guess that person could book a few extra shows if they could. I mean, I don't know, but literally right now, what do you want them to do?
It's just disconnected from reality. So while Braun, like the thing that I kept standing by, and the reason why I framed it the way I did is, yeah, Braun's wrong about what he said. He's wrong about his opinion here. He might even be a dick. I don't know. I don't know him personally. I've never actually met Braun Strowman. Everyone who I've talked to that they do know him personally, they say he's awesome and he's cool to hang out with and he's like fun to be around. And everyone who's worked with him that I've talked to says they love working with him. And he's great, and he's not a dick about working together. But he's obviously, I mean, that was just stupid to say
Right.
that. It was just dumb.
Right.
But I'm with him, and I hope that he gets more money because he deserves more money.
Right. He gets paid that guarantee regardless of his work. Like, is he wrong about that? I saw
That
David
that
Bixenspan, who's like my,
oh yeah.
yeah, he's the guy who usually comes on the show to talk about wrestling.
Oh cool.
But I saw him like tweeting about it. He was like, "Dude, you get paid regardless. You have a guarantee. Like what are you talking
Well,
about?"
he has a downside guarantee, so I don't know what I don't know the particulars of Braun Strowman's contract or anything like that, but he's a downside guarantee reportedly of $1.2 million. And I guess the point is that with that, if WWE pays him, they're only required to pay him $1.2 million for that year. That's it. So if the government comes out and basically shuts down all events or whatever, or they can't run certain places, which is it's obviously what's happening now. If they can't get them at the Performance Center to run these empty arena SmackDowns and Raws and NXTs, if they can't get them to do that, well, then are they going to try and say that they don't owe him any more money if they've already
Right.
paid him
Right.
the 1.2 million? Does he still get his merchandise? I imagine he would still get merchandise money from whatever
sold,
merch is
yeah.
selling off of him. But like
I will say though that like I totally agree with you. You know, he's a worker. Like, obviously I always hate when people complain about basketball players or baseball players or football players getting paid a lot of money. It's like, no, they're actually, it's like sports is like the one industry where the workers actually get well compensated. Like they actually make
yeah,
good money. Like, but they don't.
not enough.
Right. But it's like the one industry where like they're actually, they're getting paid. They're making money as workers, not owners, not business. Not dealing with financial stuff. But for Braun Strowman to be complaining about a $1.2 million guarantee during this specific time period, it's like nothing has bothered me more since this all started than the celebrities, the actors and the
Oh
actresses
man.
jumping on their phones, going, "We're all in this together," as you see like their full-sized piano in the background of their living room. Or this one really pissed me off. Fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger sitting in
the
his
hot tub?
sitting in his hot tub, his jacuzzi, smoking a cigar, going, "Young people, it's not so hard. Just stay inside." Dude, let me tell you, I'm in a New York City sized one bedroom apartment. The widest it goes is less than 20 steps, and there's 4 people, including 2 small kids, who want to run around living in this apartment. Let me tell you, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. I'll tell you that much right
Sure.
now. So, buddy, and I'm lucky too, because I'm lucky to have a job that is letting me work from home, because I'm a reporter, so I'm able to work from home and I'm still getting paid. I'm lucky. I'm not going to go out there like I'm going to say my hardship in comparison to the celebrities, but to everybody else, I'm lucky. So these fuckers out there saying, I'm so bored on their luxury leather couch, like Ellen was taking pictures of.
Oh my
Like
god.
it's like
Sam Smith,
it's like,
Brian, and stuff like that.
listen, if you're a celebrity and you want to get people's hopes up or whatever right now, you should do, if you're an actor, log on to a live stream and take questions about some of your movie roles. If you're a musician, perform some music or whatever. What you should not be doing is saying how, "I get it, I know what you're going through." Buddy, you guys have no idea
Don't.
what people are going through.
So that was my thing. So like when I first, it's really funny because I saw everybody freaking out about the Imagine video, right? And I watched it. And when I first watched it, I honestly, the first time I watched it through, I was like, first thing I thought in my head was, I was like, well, what? Okay, they're just trying to do something. Like, I get it. Like, they think this is being nice and they think this is being helpful because they're thinking themselves. You have to have a narcissistic point of view, right? Where you're saying like, oh, the world is being deprived of getting my talents and my ability, so let me give them something. And they think they're doing something nice and sweet and pleasant, but it's fundamentally missing the point. We don't have these like quarantine blues solely because we're stuck inside. We have cabin fever and stuff. We can't make any money, and we're still being asked to pay for our lives. So that's the kind of blues we have, and these people don't seem to understand that, and they totally miss it. Like having entertainment and all of that is great. Thanks for providing it for us, but you don't understand the issues we're going through because we're still being charged rent.
Right.
You know, like I have a landlord. My personal landlord is worth like £2 million and has like this really lucrative business and has a huge house, and he has a mortgage holiday. He has a 3-month mortgage holiday, and he's still asking for rent from his tenants because he said he needs to feed his family and keep a roof over his head. I can't work. I have no work coming in. Nobody, like, by you demanding us to pay for rent still is telling us to go work and go get sick and go put our lives at risk.
David,
that's what the celebrities aren't understanding.
David, have you tried multiplying the number of jobs you currently have? Have you?
Oh yeah, that's good. I could do that because 0 times how many jobs do I need? 3 or 4. What do I need right now? But yeah, it's just that's the problem. That's the reason why these like I saw someone say like I never thought I could hate celebrities any more than I do right now.
Oh, that was me.
Crisis.
That was me.
I love that tweet. Yeah, it was great. I was like, yeah, that's perfect. Because yeah, they're fundamentally misunderstanding the point. The thing that we're down about is the fact that we're still being asked to pay for so many things when we don't have money coming in, and no one's offering us any sort of assurance that we're going to be okay after this.
Right.
Like there's talks about why are mortgages getting holidays but renters aren't getting holidays? Why aren't we getting?
It's also like a fundamental like I don't know how old you are. You're in your 30s.
I'm 29.
Oh wow, you are you I don't want to say you look old, but you look like a man, you know.
Trust me, a lot of people think I'm older. I just turned 29 in February.
Because I am 33, and I can tell you that people.
Well, you're old, man.
But people, but people constantly look at me. And listen, it wasn't that many years ago that I was still getting carded going to R-rated movies. I don't look like I'm 33. I wish listen. This beard and this facial hair. The reason I have it is so instead of looking like I'm 17, I look like I'm 25. So
fair enough.
But people are fundamentally the older people fundamentally are misunderstanding. Like, who do you think is being helped by this whole the mortgage thing? Like, it's also not just like people who are well-to-do. Like older people tend to own homes because homes were more affordable. Just back in the 90s, they were a lot more affordable. And then all of a sudden there was this big housing boom, and then all of a sudden we're all making the same money we did, but a 1 or 2 bedroom home in New York City is multi-million dollars. So who do you think? Where do you think millennials are living? Where do you think anyone under the age of 45 is living? Majority of them are renting. So who the fuck do you think you're helping by like a whole generation is renting? Like,
yeah, that's the thing. Like, I mean, we haven't been able to buy. And then they're able to jack up these rent prices so high that we get to the point where I'm like, even my rent now, I'm like, this is so much money. I wish that I could just be paying this for a mortgage because at least I'd be paying myself basically. But now, no, I have to pay for somebody else. And then the time when I ask, like when we're just out of work and you ask for some leniency, like, hey, could you give me a week or 2 or what can we work out something about this? Because like we still, a lot of us, as much as we hate the idea of paying rent, we still understand that it's a commitment that we've made.
Right.
So we understand that even if we don't like it, even if we don't like the parameters which is set up, even if we don't like the system that we have to operate under, it's like, you live in society, but you criticize
right.
it. Well, yeah, because we have to live in society.
Right.
So like, I still wanted, like, I was still, hey, rent's due, I get it. Could you give me some time? And landlord's like, no. Well, try and find a new tenant, man. Like, who's going to move in now?
Right.
So I saw there was that one who was organizing the rent strike on April 1st. I saw there was an organization organizing that in New York.
You're right. I'm not sure. I saw that too, but I'm not sure who it was. But yeah, I've seen that. It's ridiculous that you wouldn't just. The assumption would be, why not just combine when you're going to announce the mortgage thing? Why not also just throw in the rent too? I mean, you got to be kidding me! Like, this is a joke. Like, I guess people like you and me, David, we could always. What we're going to have to do is we're going to have to tap into our 401k a bit early, right? I mean.
Oh my God! But that pisses me off even more. When people are saying like, "Yeah, don't you have savings for times like this?" Like, you're a self-employed person. Are you saving? It's like, not only do I not have savings right now because I haven't been able to really save enough. Like, I do have some savings, but my savings aren't supposed to be for a time of international crisis. That shouldn't be the time when my savings are supposed to be for when I'm retired. My savings are supposed to be when I want to go on holiday. My savings are supposed to be paying for whatever, something I need for my kids, or if I have something to give them later. That's what that's supposed to be for. That's what savings are for. It's not supposed to be for, oh, hey, the entire world has to shut down, so you still have to pay me rent, though.
Right.
Why would my savings go to that?
I will say one positive, I guess, is that when I do see those stock market charts, to me it's just, line goes up, line goes down. Doesn't matter to me.
It's just ridiculous that obviously you could get into the whole thing of that, this ridiculous paradigm that the economy is dependent on endless growth, and that was just always going to be it, and that, we've constantly hit these massive bubble bursting moments, and we just don't seem to actually learn the lesson from it. I'm just hoping that on the other side of this, we get some sort of new normal, because this has just exacerbated. I think that this crisis has sold socialism more than any person ever could.
Yeah,
because everyone's a socialist in a crisis.
But the problem is the same people are going to be in control. So I'm worried about that.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
I think these people, the thing is, I don't know if these people have ever seen an angry mob before, but they're doing the right things to get one started. Like, that's honestly what it comes down to, because it's harder in America, I know, because we're so far apart and every single region has its own thing. But I think everybody is kind of collectively struggling right now, man.
Right.
I think, you see Republicans saying that people need to be sent UBI checks.
Right.
Right.
No, that's true. That's true. I hope. To me, the most telling sign would be when we come out the other side of this. We were talking about housing and rent, where the housing prices are, because there would be nothing that I would rather do than never have to pay rent again, because it would be nice to have have a place. That, to me, that's the ultimate. Like, healthcare obviously will always be the ultimate, but we've seen in other countries that it's only time is of the essence. We will eventually, Medicare for all will soon be a thing, but no one in the world has solved the housing issue. So, like, we need to really figure out a way where everyone can afford a home and they're not stuck living under someone who's telling them that give me money now, like, that should be a thing. It shouldn't happen.
Well, yeah, I think owning someone else's home is inherently immoral and doesn't really make sense.
Landlords shouldn't exist, right?
They shouldn't exist.
They shouldn't.
It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. It's a grotesque business, and it doesn't. I don't understand why we've allowed it for this long. Yeah, we should just have universal housing. Obviously, that should just be a thing. And there's a whole deeper dive in private property and stuff all around.
Right.
But yeah, it first and foremost, there shouldn't be landlords at all. That shouldn't be allowed to happen.
Right. The idea that these guys who make sure to check that you're making triple the income of the monthly rent. The idea that they would say to you, "Oh no, if you don't pay me rent, I'm not gonna have any more money." Hello.
This guy, my landlord said that to me when I asked for a week's worth leniency so I could move some money around, liquidate some things, and also take money from my American account to my UK account. It's this whole other thing, and I asked for just like a week, and he said something about you should have savings for a time like this. I was thinking, it's like, well, you should have savings for a time like this. How about that? Because clearly we're in the same boat, aren't we?
Right.
Also, most of us. When you move into a place, you have to put down a security deposit, which is at least 2 months' rent most of the time.
Right.
Is that not what this is for?
Well,
now?
he probably already spent that.
Yeah.
not during crisis either. He probably already spent that on a nice
No.
extra whatever for his family, and everything was going good, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, he just built a new he's built like this big fence around his house, like a high gate fence, and they added this like electronic
Right.
open thing.
Right.
It's insane.
The idea that that people buy houses and then basically rent them out and have those people then pay their mortgages is just it's the most infuriating thing. It really is. Like it's just
Yep.
unbelievable. But
We should just decommodify all human rights, I think.
right. I mean, listen, if you want to if you think that people should make money off of entertainment or luxury goods or whatever, fine, I agree. But basic necessities should not mean life or death. People should be given that regardless. And you know what? Not only will it make everyone happier, I'll guarantee you it'll make everyone, and I know businesses, the capitalists care most about this, it would make everyone more productive too. I guarantee it.
Yeah, and shorten the work week and do all that stuff.
Right.
It makes everyone more productive. It does a lot of good.
Right. David, I'm wearing, I know you can't see it because I'm sitting, but I'm wearing this shirt.
Oh yeah.
Where can people find you online? Where can they buy your merch? Being that this isn't usually a wrestling podcast, I guess
Sure.
where tell them where they can find your merch in case they want to buy that anyway, but also tell them where they could find your clips so they could become fans of David Starr, whether it's pay clips or free stuff you have online. Plug it all right now and make sure you get it all in.
Well, if you want to see me wrestle and stuff, I actually fairly recently, over the past like 2 years, a lot of companies have been releasing my matches for free on YouTube, which has been really cool. So you can just search for David Starr on YouTube, David Starr Wrestler, just David Starr. You'll find some cool matches that are out there for free. Some of them are long. You can find promos of mine and all that stuff they're quite good and really well produced and everything. You can check me out on Twitter and Instagram at the product DS, and I have links to my merchandise stores on there, which are bottomlinemerch.com/David Starr, prowrestlingtees.com/David Starr, sl-wrestling.de/David-Starr, and my brand new merch store that I just opened up, davidstarmerch.com. You can also, most importantly for me, check out We the Independent. As we said, we sell merchandise, and we take a portion of our proceeds to pay for pro wrestlers' trade union membership into Equity UK to give them security and freedom as unionized independent artists. That's WeTheIndependent.com. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at WeTheIndie. Indie spelled with an IE, not a Y, because we're indie, not indie. Check out our podcast as well, WeTheIndependent.com/podcast, or just search We the Independent in your favorite podcast app. Yeah, I think I got all of my stuff in there. Support other pro wrestlers and other independent pro wrestling promotions right now. Just go to find their streaming services like OTTOnDemand.com, RevProOnDemand.com. Go find all like these indie wrestling companies. Go do a dive into it. Find their streaming service and support it. There's something Independent Wrestling TV, IWTV.live, which is awesome. It has all of these different wrestling companies from all over the world, all on their streaming service like that. They have like Beyond Wrestling, they have Game Changer Wrestling, they have CZW stuff. It's awesome. And they have great clips from all over the place. Go support independent wrestling. We need it now more than ever.
Before you clarified indie wrestling, I was gonna jokingly say, WWE Network.
No, I put a big thing. Don't cancel your network subscriptions, because again, the wrestlers don't get anything.
Right.
They get zero royalties from that. Right. The performers don't get anything from the WWE Network, but when you support an independent wrestling streaming service, a vast majority of the money that comes from the streaming service goes towards paying the wrestlers.
Right, and also, if I'm not going to get my big ass football stadium WrestleMania, that $10 a month doesn't seem so cheap. I don't want a guy watch a couple guys in a Gold's Gym, basically. Like,
no one wants that, man. Come on.
David Starr, thank you so much for joining me tonight, and going super long too. Usually we don't go this long, but this was basically a politics conversation, a coronavirus, life under coronavirus conversation, and then for me a wrestling conversation, and also maybe a message to me that I need to start a separate wrestling podcast so I don't go overboard like this with the wrestling stuff on this show. Thanks so much for joining me tonight. I hope everything. I see. So stay happy, healthy, safe, and I hope everything goes well. And that when you're back in America, I will be at your next indie show. And
Thanks.
also, maybe I could show up early, and you could let me step in my first wrestling ring if that's a possibility.
Yes, I mean, if we make that happen, we can make that happen. David Griscom of the Michael Brooks Show came to my last show that when I was in Brooklyn. He came by and checked it out, so we can make something happen, man.
I just want to step in one. I'm not asking for anything more. I'm not asking for anyone to worry about their insurance. I'm not going to jump off the top rope. I just want to step in a ring.
Sure, we'll make it happen. We'll make it work.
Take care, man. Have a great night. Thanks for staying up late too. What time is it over there? Jesus Christ.
I don't even know it anymore. Well, it doesn't matter. All the time doesn't make a difference.
Right. Nowhere to go.
What are we waking up
Yeah.
for?
Doesn't. Well, I got my kids wake me up at 6:30 in the morning. Yeah.
See, I don't have real responsibilities like that. It's just me and my girlfriend all cooped up here in our flat.
Right. Well, you never know what's gonna happen. Your guys will be all cooped up in your flat.
For quite a while. So, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It was a great time.
Take care, man.
Yeah.
Bloop, bloop. There goes Skype. Ladies and gentlemen, we went long, so you know what? Let's keep it the whole show is gonna be free, but I think we're gonna call it a show. I will be doing more streams while I'm home, obviously. I will tell you that the last show I did was last Sunday after the debate. And I usually do the primary shows, but after the previous Super Tuesday, and then this last Super Tuesday, I didn't because I wasn't sure where it was going because Bernie didn't talk, which is unusual for him. And also with this coronavirus stuff, it's been, hard. My kids, everyone in this house basically has been sick. Now with coronavirus, but me, my two kids, my partner, we've all been sick throughout this past week. And basically what's happening is because we're cooped up inside all together, one gets better and then gets sick again because they're in close quarters with the other kid and another person who's sick. So we've all been we've had allergies and congestion and stuff like that. And so I think I just needed about a little less than a week to just pause it, make sure I wasn't doing streams with kids crying in the background like the last stream happened on the last stream. And, it doesn't matter if they do, but if I can not wake them up, like is normally what happens during the show, that's optimal. So I think everything's back on track now. They've slept through so far. They're starting to feel a little bit better, although the baby's still a little bit congested. I want to do more streams. I think we will. So youtube.com/MattBinder. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Patreon.com/MattBinder. Listen, I get that this is the hardest time that most people have ever, at once at least, will ever go through. I'm assuming that I'm going to lose patrons. It's going to be rough losing those patrons because the Patreon money does help. But I'm one of the lucky people who is currently, I'm currently still making money with my full-time job. It is, paycheck to paycheck, but that's better than what most people are going to end up doing. So if you can't become a patron, all I ask is subscribe to the YouTube channel. Tell people about the show. That's it. Spread the word and subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm cool. That's a big help to me. Do not give me money if you cannot afford to do so, please. But if you can, and you're looking for something to support, I'd love to help to build this show. I'd love to do more regular streams and podcasts. I would love to, have more shows shining a light on what people are going through right now, because everyone's feeling pretty fucking doomed right now. And having the funds to do that would be a great help. Patreon.com/MattBinder. And those people who make the show possible are Abigail, Adam, Alan, Amanda, Andrew C, Andrew H, Angela, Ari, Baka, Ben, Benji, Bobby, Brosnan, Champagne Kami, Chris, Christine, Colin, Connor, Cracker Barrel, CT, Cynthia, Dan K, Dan M, Dank Uger, Dave K, David Z, Daya, Doug, Dragonslayer, Eugene, Fraz, FTW All Day, Greywind, Greg, Grim, Hitesh, Igor, Jack, Jameson, Janelle, Jasmine, Jeremy, John B, John S, Jonathan B, Jonathan L, Joseph H, Joseph R, Joyce, Justin, Katie, Kaushal, Lance, Lisa, M. Carroll, Mariah, Mark, Matt, Max, me, Melissa, Mitch, Michael B, Michael J, Michael M, Mr. Danks, Nicole, Nam Denet, Null Style, Odeth, Paul, Penelope, Custer, Rad Dad, Remy, Ryan, Scott, Seth, Sean, Snazzles, Stephen R, Stephen S, Steve A, TM, Tamney, Terrence, Hypervisor, This Is Not Pizza, Tina, Todd, Tom, Vance, Why That Thai Guy, Utopian, and Zoe. Follow me on Twitter at Matt Binder. Follow me on all the other networks at Matt Binder usually, except TikTok, where I'm Matthew Binder. I haven't really used TikTok, but maybe I should start using it. Instagram is Matt Binder. YouTube is Matt Binder. Twitter is Matt Binder. Facebook is Matt Binder. Twitch is Matt Binder. Twitch. I recently got a Twitch affiliate email saying I've been invited to join their affiliate program. I should do more Twitch stuff, shouldn't I? If you're a Twitch person, hit me up. I want to talk with you. I'm not all that into Twitch, so I want to talk with you about what I can do that's more Twitch friendly, that's more Twitch specific. Yeah. Other than that, this was the 100th episode of Doomed. It is what it is. I'm not gonna. I was thinking of doing. I wanted to do a nice big 100 episode, but don't feel like doing it under all this. We'll celebrate the 100th episode of Doomed later. The 150th episode of Doomed we'll celebrate. You know. Other than that. Folks. Oh, Matt fixed the Discord challenge. I should fix the Discord. Is something going on with the Discord? That should say enough as to why I'm not all that in tune with the Discord, right? Are people not automatically with the Discord anymore? Yeah, alright. I'll work on Discord as well. Alright, folks. Thank you for joining me tonight. Did anyone else get a super chat in? Don't want to miss those. No, just Renee's. All right, thank you, everybody. Have a good night, and see you all next time on Doomed.